to the Dr. Nomathemba Mokgedi, I will be the acting chairperson to the legislature. I, Honorable Nomathemba Mokgedi, acting chairperson of the Infrastructure Development and Property Management Portfolio Committee in the legislature, hereby declare Mogale City Centenary Hall as a precinct of the Gauteng Provincial Legislature for the 5th of June 2023. This is in terms of Rule 56, subsection 1 and subsection 2 of the standing rules of the Gauteng Provincial Legislature. Thus, the standing rule of the legislature will apply and govern all the engagements of the day. I thank you. Where is the agenda? Okay. Now that the Mogale City Centenary Community Hall has been declared as a precinct of the legislature, maybe before I can proceed, I just want to check if did you receive these le kry-ile dilo tse? Because jaanong re bua Sekgowa mo and re tshwanetse re etse sure gore everyone o leng teng mo o understand gore re bua ka eng. So ke tlo kopa le emise matsogo ba le fe dilo tse di kenang mo ditsebeng ke di translator tsa rona, and then le tla bona go na le ntho e ka reng remote, so e le tlo e tholang ke di language. The first language will be English, which is 1. Sepedi, Sesotho, ke 4. isiZulu or isiXhosa ke 3. And then Afrikaans will be number 2. I'm not sure, Kaya, if there's anybody with a sign language. Okay, but the sign language will be beamed on the screen. I think it will assist all of us gore re kgone go followa gore go etsagalang ka meeting wa rona today. Ha ntse re emetse gore le kry di translating gadgets. Ke tlo kopa gore ke amogele our honorable members le our support staff, and there's someone from the National Council of Provinces and the National Department of Infrastructure or Baibisa Public Works ko national. So I'm going to allow the honorable members starting from my right to introduce themselves, and then we'll then proceed on my left. And then I'm going to request staff, because they are all over, our support staff, just to, when they are supposed to introduce themselves, just to wave so that you can see hore ke bo mang ba tla kgonang go le thusa when you need assistance. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Nico de Jager. I'm a member of the committee that's doing this public hearing. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Nombuso Njogwe. I'm a member of this committee. Thank you.
Morning, everyone. My name is Khomuzo Tong, member of this committee.
Okay, thank you very much. Support staff, wherever you are standing, you can just wave so that our stakeholders can be able to recognize you. If they need anything, they can be able to go to yourselves for assistance. Just wave. Okay. Thank you very much, Raleboga Baya Danki. I just want to make sure before we start with our presentation on the bill, or you received this, because somebody was putting her hand up I think there were two people this side. Can you please put, you can speak, ma. There were two people on this side who put their hands up. Or you want this? Lady Tots. Because it's important that all of us are following on the proceedings of the presentation. I will also would like to acknowledge the following councillors. Alderman Brian Blake, can you please greet our stakeholders? Thank you. Alderman Jacqueline Pana. You'll forgive me if I pronounce your surnames wrong. Ne? It's very difficult. And Councillor Jaco. Councillor Dominica Pana. Thank you. Councillor Lynette. Thank you. Councillor Jean Kutze. Councillor Trudy. Councillor Bitumelo. Councillor Aletta van Lochenberg. Councillor Zila. Councillor Zila is Nisoni. Okay. Councillor, this one is very, very difficult. Washenan. Thank you. And lastly, Councillor Geld Kubal. Kubai. Okay. Hey, later. Oh, Councillor Geli Kubai. Okay. No, thank you very much. And then as and when the councillors are joining us, you just bring their names to the table so that we can acknowledge them. Are we ready to start? Where is the agenda? Prepare agenda. And you can't. I'm told that I must apologize on behalf of the department because we could not print the documents. So that is why it's so important for all our stakeholders to receive the gadgets, and then so that you can note for yourselves as the presentation is going through. This is the last consultation that we are going to do. We have visited all 4 regions, and this is the last one. And then after we have consulted all the regions, our stakeholders in all the regions will then consult Amakosi, the Khoshi, and the chiefs. So I just hope that you are going to accept our apology because we don't have documents. And then, this is the password for what?
It's for the laptop in case it goes off.
Oh, okay, thank you. Flight the agenda then. Okay, we are now on item number 2. I'm not going to speak on the on the bill itself, because the department is going to do a presentation. They will give us the purpose of this bill. Why are we consulting our stakeholders, and anything that we need to know about the bill itself. And we are not supposed to guide you in any way. You must make your own inputs. Le tshwantse lona le re bolelle di comments tsa lona, maybe ha le batla go understand something for clarity. Yaka re le mo re government, ha gona o belongang to any party. So ne ke re ke tlhalose fela yalo. Now on the agenda we're on item number 2, which is apologies. Mr. Mdlalose, can you please read out the apologies that have been tendered?
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Chair, as you had alluded, the Honorable Pomudi said the Chairperson of the committee could not attend due to ill health. The second apology is from Honorable Member Makakula, who's also currently in hospital and is unable to attend the meeting. The third apology is from Honorable Member Mngube, who has an appointment which is scheduled for today and is unable to attend the meeting. And the fourth apology is from Honorable Member Masilela, who indicated that she's unable to attend the meeting due to urgent matters. And then the fifth apology is from Honorable Member Deyache, who has indicated that he would like to be he would request to be excused at 11:30 as he has a doctor's appointment. And then the sixth apology is from the MEC and the HOD, who have indicated they are unable to attend the meeting due to a meeting that coincides with the public hearing. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much, Kaya, for that. Can we accept the apologies, honorable members? No, please, no. No. No, let me explain. This process, it's your process. If you are saying we are going to postpone simply because the MEC and the HOD and other honorable members are not here, it's not going to assist because you're going to miss out. And before I started the meeting, I did declare this centenary hall as a precinct of the legislature. So it means the way we behave when we are invited in the legislature, we must behave the same. And even when you are making comments, we need to respect the speaker that is on the platform. This process has got nothing to do with the MEC, has got nothing to do with the HOD, but it is your process. So if you are saying no, not even the MEC or the provincial department is going to present. The presentation comes from the National Council of Provinces and the Department of Public Works from National. They are here. So those are the people that are bringing the information to yourselves. So if maybe there are other issues, service delivery issues that are not making you happy, unfortunately, will not be able to assist. This process is yours to make sure that you participate in the process, and at the end, when the bill is signed into law, you must know that you have made your inputs. So ke tlo kopa fela gore re tlhomphaneng, as I said, ke re tlo berekisa molao o re o berekisang ha re le ko legislature. So ke tlo ikopela fela gore le se ke be la re lengala process e ke ya lona. And according to the timelines tsa NCOP, this is the last consultation that we are going to do. So let's not miss out Because even if the MEC was here, the MEC was not going to say anything because the process is the National Council of Provinces and the National Department of Public Works, and they are here. Ra utlwana ke re? Ka tlhompho le ka boikokobetso. Meneer? Yes.
A recording of my input, as easy as that. We sit in a meeting where 6 of the committee is not here today. How must we feel to come here to participate, but there's nobody to participate with? We can go home and send you a video of our inputs. Why do we need to participate if we need answers and we need to get proper input? What this says is that the importance of this issue is not important to the legislature. They're not here to discuss with us the important issues. Why are we here then today?
Sir,
This is the way we are treated as the public who wants to give input on this. We're not interested in going further. Thank you.
sir, can I explain? As the legislature, we are serving in different committees. And the other members went overseas, they are only coming back this morning. So when I said earlier that we are making a quorum, as we are sitting here, we are collaborating as a committee, of which when we are doing public participation, it's not even necessary for us to collaborate. So your inputs, I explained that we are not even supposed to influence your input. The people who must do the presentations are here. The National Council of Provinces is here. They will respond to your questions, and the National Department of Public Works are here. The reason why the MEC was invited and the HOD was just to come and give us support. But this is your process. You can't postpone this process because it is your process. And as a legislature, we have come to you and we are collaborating. If we want to talk about quorum, we are collaborating. So can we please allow the National Council of Provinces to do a presentation? Because this is not imbizo where we're gonna raise our service delivery issues. This is strictly related to the bill itself. Are we clear, Bahul? Rakoreida. But what I'm trying to say, Kiri, we are serving in different committees. Some of the members, ba ile overseas. And today is the last day for this public participation. And if you want to say Rakoreida, there's only one member who is not here, and the other member is being admitted in the hospital. No, the MEC has got nothing to do with this process. Yes, ma'am. Ma'am?
Thank you. Madam Chairperson, I fail to understand that a MEC knows a process and that knows that this is the last sitting for the people of the West Rand to do public participation, and that the MEC feels that it is not important that we have representation by that department. We honor that you, as the acting chairperson, has come and that you have come as a committee. We honor that and we thank you for that. But I want it to be recorded that the people of Mogale City and the people on the West Rand are more important to Gauteng province and to national government than what they think we are. We need to be included and our participation must be recorded. We are not agreeing that we are not important enough for Gauteng legislature just to brush us aside. Thank you very much, ma'am.
Thank you very much, ma'am. I was just being informed that there are people from the office of the MEC. If there's any burning issue that we need to raise, you will be given the pink forms that you can raise on issues that relates to the department. But unfortunately, this process is a national process which seeks us as a legislature to come and consult. Let us not miss this opportunity. I also have a card here, Yanet Bank. Somebody dropped their card. They must just come in. Is it a SASSA card? Somebody must just come and get it here from Kaya. So I'm going to plead with you, our stakeholders, Baholo, ke a le kopa hore let us not miss this opportunity because we are given strict time frames where we need to consult the community and then get their inputs before everything can be consolidated, because this is the last region that we are visiting to make sure that we get your inputs. Because people who are supposed to answer your questions, if you have any questions, are the people from the National Council of Provinces. They are here. There is also the Department of Public Works at National. They are here. So I'm going to plead with you in terms of the rules of the legislature. We are also cooperating as a committee. One member of us is sick. Member Magagula is admitted in the hospital. Member Ngube is only landing this morning from overseas trip, because we are serving not only in this committee, but also in other committees. I'm going to ask that we proceed. Ke a ikopela tswetswe, if go na le issues tse di burning, tse di batlang MEC, we'll make sure that if there are questions, written questions that are given, that the MEC must come back and consult with the people of Mogale City and the West Rand, because they are not happy. But today, we are here for the expropriation of land bill that needs to be voted for at a specific period. That also needs to be enacted into law. Once the president signs it, then it means it becomes law. But let us not stay behind. Arska salang ko morago, re tla dila ka issue ya MEC, and then re tla mo isetsa molaetsa gore MEC baagi ba ko Mogale City le West Rand, they are not happy. They want to see you as a matter of agency. And I also commit that I will personally speak to the MEC. But this process, it's your process. You have to make inputs on this bill, and let us not deny our people that opportunity. Thank you very much. We can then move to the next item, which is a presentation by the National Council of Provinces. Ake go bone ko kae? Okay. You can speak in that.
Okay, thank you very much, Chairperson. Chairperson, we hear you in your attempts to try and mitigate the challenge that we have. We hear you, and the importance of us deliberating on this matter. However, it is not only about the absence of the MEC. Also, your process in terms of inviting us here, it was not so clean. Some of us, we just got the invitation this morning, and we get it via a friend. We are not invited by the legislature. So we want to concur and agree with the DA to say the process that the legislature is using in terms of making sure this becomes a clear and all-inclusive participatory process. You did not adhere to it. So yes, we hear you, you are saying, let us go on. But us as people of West Rand, we are not happy. You are not taking us seriously. You are only coming here to tick in the box.
Thank you very much for that input. I will allow Bokaya to just come and explain how people were invited. But as I said, this is the last region that we are visiting. And my understanding in all the regions that were visited, we never had issues of invitations. So I will ask Maureen just to check how were the invitations made. And we really apologize if we did not reach everyone. But can I allow Maureen just to explain on the issue of the invitations?
Thank you, Chairperson. Good morning to everyone. My name is Maureen Chabalala. The invitations were sent through different adverts on different newspapers, and also they were on some radio stations where the chairperson was interviewed. We also forwarded the invitations to different constituencies around the area. Yes, that is how we even forwarded an invitation to the office of the Speaker, and yes, I remember I wrote the letter to the office of the Speaker. Thank you, Honorable members and communities of Mogale City.
Thank you very much, Maureen, for that explanation. Bagolo, kia kopa tswetswe. Kia kopa, ki kopile gore re respectane. And you know, it's so surprising. I'm telling Honorable Dong here that, you know, out of all the districts that I have visited, we never experienced this. And this is my region. This is where I come from. And it's really sad that my own people are not allowing us to proceed with the meeting. I don't know what we are going to say, because I think the issue,
over the radio. And as much as I read the papers, I've never seen that from the papers. And also, even if she has written the letter to the office of the Speaker, it's supposed to have been out in due time, but we haven't yet received that. It's still with them, both of them. Maybe it's still with them, Maureen and the Speaker. But to us, as the community, as the community of Westland, we have never received that. And as my comrade has said, that we have heard the announcement or the invitation, we got it through a friend. How? I don't know what the friend got it, but we got that. And next time, I would ask you to say that whenever you are going to have something of this nature in Mogale City, make that in advance and make it in time and properly. Please take us. I hear you, Chairman, when you say wherever you have been going, you never have this problem. Yes, we are not commodities to be compared to those others. We are Mogale City. We are the Westland. We are not commodities. We are not supposed to be compared to others.
okay. Re kopa go apologize. Hane kere in other areas, I was saying that I was not comparing you per se, but honestly speaking, this is the first time. And I'm also a chairperson of social development. I was also busy with the bill, fundraising amendment bill. So when I was saying it is for the first time, I just wanted to know what happens, because most of the time we're working with the office of the Speaker in all municipalities, that they are assisting us in terms of making sure that our stakeholders receive the message on time. Maureen has also indicated that there's a West Side FM that I think the chair was on, and they were also assisting us. Even this morning on the radio, they were talking about it. And then there's also community radio stations. I don't know, Maureen, which one. But we really apologize because we as the legislature were relying mainly on the speaker's offices to assist us to invite. Even when we are invited in the legislature, we work through the office of the speaker. So I'm going to humbly request Batubako Khai Hore, let us not miss this opportunity and make sure that we participate. We are noting all your concerns, and there's quite a number of bills that are out. There's also human settlement and so on. So I suspect that it might have fallen through the cracks in the office of the speakers in the West Rand. So I would like to apologize on their behalf. But when you are here, you are also a voice of the people who did not manage to come and participate. And it does not end here. You can also do written submissions. They will also be considered when we consolidate the submission to the National Council of Provinces. So at the end of the presentations, we'll give you that website where you can send your comments. Thank you very much. Ke a leboga batho ba ko gae. Ke ikopela fela gore re fe the National Council of Provinces the opportunity to present so that you can be able to engage with them properly. Thank you very much. NCOP? Ke legal bill.
Thank you so much, Chairperson, and good morning, honorable members and colleagues and our valued stakeholders. My name is Winnie Ngubane Sambo. I am a legal advisor within the GPL, the Gauteng Provincial Legislature, in a unit called the National Council of Provinces and Legal Services Unit. What I'm going to take you through is a presentation really about how we actually process the bills, in particular this one, the expropriation bill, in the Gauteng Provincial Legislature, and where exactly do your inputs or your submission fit in. Now, most of the time, stakeholders lament that, you know, do our public input or do the inputs that we make via, you know, the public hearings and through the written submissions that we send to you guys, are they even taken into account? And so this presentation is really geared towards taking you into confidence as to what really transpires within the GPL. And we're also within the NCOP, that's the National Council of Provinces at National Parliament, when we are processing this particular bill. So the presentation is structured into two parts. Part one is the introductory section, and part two is really the main section that we want to focus on, and that is processing a Section 76 bill in the legislature. Now, the introduction. I won't dwell too much on the on the introduction, but I'll take you through it because I think that a lot of the information here is already or might be already common cause to most stakeholders. But just for the sake of completeness, I'll briefly just take you through. So this particular slide really just is geared towards highlighting what the legislature is. It's one of the arms of state, and it coexists with other arms, either judiciary and the executive. And one of its mandates, which it derives from the Constitution, is lawmaking and public participation, and that is why we are here. before you. So we just wanted to, I think that's one of the things that we just wanted to highlight in this particular slide. And also just to also note that in carrying out its work, you know, the legislature really tries to ensure adherence to the Constitution, you know, the standing rules of the legislature, as well as all other relevant laws of the Republic that may be applicable. So that is basically what that slide is about. The next slide really just zooms into the lawmaking powers of the legislature. As I've alluded to in the earlier slide, one of the powers that the Constitution gives provincial legislatures is lawmaking powers, and that you'll find that in Section 104 of the Constitution. We've also noted Section 114, subsection 1 of the Constitution, again, which gives the legislature legislative powers, and it says that in exercising its legislative power, a provincial legislature may consider, pass, amend, or reject any bill before the legislature and initiate or prepare legislation except money bills. So that is the source of the legislature's powers to consider, you know, Section 76 bills, and in particular, this particular bill that is before us. We also just wanted to highlight for stakeholders the types of bills that, you know, we may come across or you may come across. Just to emphasize that a bill is proposed legislation in draft form. So what we are considering here is still in its draft form. That is why we are here to receive your inputs, which may have the potential to influence the final outcome or the final act if it is passed. We wanted to highlight that there are, you know, there are some of the bills that we may come across. Those are Section 74 bills. Those are bills amending the Constitution. Then we have Section 75 bills. Those are ordinary bills not affecting provinces. So those bills don't come even to us as the provincial legislature because they don't fall within our competence, legislative competence. And then we have the one in red, which I've highlighted in red, Section 76 bills. These are ordinary bills affecting provinces, and that is exactly where, or that is the category that the expropriation bills falls under, and that is why we are here considering this particular bill, because it affects, you know, provinces. And then you have your Section 77 money bills, which we need not worry ourselves about. So moving on to the most important part, as I've alluded to earlier, and that is how exactly do we process a Section 76 bill in the legislature? And we've prepared a flow chart or flow diagram just to take you through the various steps. I hope it's not audible. I hope it's visible. Can you see it? No. Oh gosh. It's tiny. Let me try and see if we cannot zoom into it. Kaya, can you please help? Can we zoom into the slide so that it can be a bit more visible, this one? What is this? Okay. Is it better? No? Okay, you know what? I'm just going to do it like this. Is it better now? Yeah, okay, thank you. So I'll just take you through as piece by piece or block by block. So the first step is that it starts at the National Assembly. Now, once the National Assembly passes a bill, a Section 76 bill, such as this one, it transmits that bill to the National Council of Provinces. Now, the National Council of Provinces, in short, is the house in Parliament that really looks after the interests of the provinces in national Parliament. So when the National Council of Provinces receives that bill from the National Assembly, it will then informally refer the bill to provincial legislatures. And when we say that it is informally referring a bill, it means that the bill is being referred before the bill has been introduced or tabled in the NCOP House. So this step is just a preliminary step to let the provinces know that, listen, provinces, there's this bill in the pipeline. Here it is. You can start reading about it or around it and start preparing yourself because it will come to you in due course. Once the Speaker receives that bill from the National Council of Provinces, that is the Speaker of the Gauteng Provincial Legislature, the Speaker also refers the bill to the committee, that is to the relevant committee, and the relevant MEC for information and planning. So the Speaker, that's our Speaker, Honorable Mehwe, would have referred this particular bill, the expropriation bill, informally to this particular committee so that the committee can start maybe reading up and preparing itself to really start dealing with the bill later on. The next step is that once the bill has been introduced or tabled in the NCOP, the NCOP will then formally refer the bill to the provincial legislature, all 9 of them, and provide timeframes to process the bill. So, and that is very important. Now, this stage is very important because once it has been formally referred, it means that the ball has now started rolling. The committee or the provincial legislatures need to actually now start the process of processing the bill and considering the bill and hosting public participation events, etc. So all of that, all of those processes start once the bill has been formally referred by the NCOP to the provincial legislatures, providing timeframes as to when certain documents need to be submitted to it, back to it for consideration. And that is why sometimes people complain that maybe our timeframes are a bit truncated, but we just wanted to let you know that in most cases, and in fact, in all of the cases, our timeframes are informed by the National Council of Provinces timeframes, which it has provided to us. The next process would now then be the Speaker formally referring the bill to the relevant committee and relevant MEC for processing. Again, so this is when the Speaker is saying to the relevant committee, now you can start the ball rolling. You can start processing this bill. And that process is quite involved, and it includes the committee will prepare a plan on how to process the bill, including timeframes. And the committee, the next step is that the committee will, undergo a thorough information receiving sort of process. And what I mean by that is that it will receive a briefing by the National Department and the National Council of Provinces Special Delegate on the bill, and that is really the meat of the information that the committee is going to be receiving, because in that presentation, the department will tell the committee will tell the committee what the bill is about, what it seeks to do, and go through a clause by clause, a presentation of the bill, so that it really empowers the honourable members and the rest of the committee as to really what this bill is about and what it seeks to do. The next presentation that the committee will receive is a legal opinion from us. That's the Legal Services Unit on really the constitutionality of the bill. Does it pass, in our view, does it pass constitutional muster? That's the question we seek to answer in that legal opinion. And we present that legal opinion before the committee. And the next presentation that the committee receives is the socioeconomic analysis, and that is really the socioeconomic impact of this proposed piece of legislation. And our committee, a researcher, handles that and prepares that and presents that before the committee. The next presentation is that the committee receives are the views of the provincial executive. Remember, this bill emanates from national, so it's not it's not a provincial bill, but we invite the MEC or the provincial executive, that is the MEC of this particular department, to come before us as a stakeholder to express their views on this particular proposed bill. What are their views? What are their views of the constitutionality of the bill, as well as, is it implementable, etc. Those are some of the issues that they cover in their presentation, and as you can see, it's quite a compact, quite a comprehensive information gathering process that the committee goes through in order to arm itself and prepare itself for really coming to you to receive your inputs. The next step is the most, I always feel like it's the most important, and that is the one highlighted in blue, in the blue rectangle. And this is where the committee goes out and solicits inputs from members of the public through written submissions or public hearings. Now, this is where, I say this is because this is where members of the public actually are given an opportunity to make meaningful inputs on the bill, which may be incorporated into the final outcome of the legislature's view of the committee, which we will then send to the NCOP Select Committee to say, we have consulted the people of Gauteng thoroughly, and this is what they are saying, this is how they feel about the bill, and this is their message, basically. And I always want to emphasize that when we send that it's called a negotiating mandate. When we send that negotiating mandate to the NCOP, the National Council of Provinces, it's not really the negotiating mandate of this particular committee sitting before you. It is the negotiating mandate of the people of Gauteng. What are the people of Gauteng saying about this particular bill? And that is what informs the vote, the final vote that the Gauteng Provincial Legislature sends to the National Council of Provinces. So I urge members of the community to really engage with the bill and send us relevant inputs. I always advise that when you are making inputs, perhaps maybe tackle a particular clause and say, I see that you say in clause X, Y, and Z, this is what it proposed to do. I do not agree with this proposal because of X, Y, and Z. And that makes it a bit more helpful for us so that we can incorporate your inputs in the negotiating mandate to the National Council of Provinces. So that's just a little tip from myself, from the legal side, in terms of stakeholders making inputs. So the next phase, once we have concluded this public participation phase, we move on to the next stage, which is the negotiating mandate stage, and I've already touched on that. The negotiating mandate really indicates the parameters for negotiating and proposed amendments. Do we have any proposed amendments that may have emanated from this public participation process that could make the bill a bit better? So if we do have, we'll then put that into the negotiating mandate. It's a long, very long, it can be a very long document, but it's important that we transmit it, and we transmit it as an accurate reflection of the views of the people of Gauteng. The next phase is the final mandate phase. So once the NCOP has considered all of the negotiating mandates from all 9 provinces, and the provinces have indicated their voting parameters and their proposed amendments, it will then send back a revised version of the bill, which is the C&D version of the bill, which would indicate whether there are any proposed amendments that would have been a result of the public participation process. And so what we now vote on is that amended form of the bill. And so the legislature will then now have to indicate whether it's voting in favor, against, or abstaining from voting. on that particular bill. We're almost there, almost done. The next phase is the NCOP. Once it has received the voting mandates, the final and voting mandates from all the 9 provinces, then it will sit in plenary and the NCOP votes. Each province has 1 vote, and in order for a bill to pass as an act, in order for the bill to pass in the NCOP, it has to have at least five votes from 5 provinces. So if it fails to gather support of 5 provinces, then the bill won't pass in the National Council of Provinces. But if it does manage to gather 5 votes, at least 5 votes, then the bill can be passed, and then the next phase, which I'll talk to now, will ensue. And that is, once the bill has passed, or if it is passed in the National Council of Provinces, it is then transmitted back to the National Assembly for the National Assembly to pass the bill. Now, the National Assembly can, again, vote in favor, against, or abstain from voting on the bill. So it's another voting process. It's very multi-layered. Now, if the National Assembly passes the bill, then it is transmitted to the President for assent, and it becomes an act of Parliament. And once that has been done, a signed copy is entrusted to the Constitutional Court for safekeeping. Now, this is a very high-level explanation about the process, but the main aim was just to give you an idea of how the process unfolds in both us, within the GPL, and as well as at national level, the NCOP and the National Assembly. So that is the end of my presentation, Honorable Chairperson and Honorable Members. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Chabalala, for that presentation. Ngubani, chinchile sinini. Oh, Miss Ngubani. Nake ke Chabalala, or ke wa ko petitions. I hope that we have understood the process of this bill. And if there are any questions, we'll raise them after the last presentation. We are going to get the last presentation on the bill itself, so that we can understand the clauses of the bill that needs to be amended and what the bill says itself. And then after that, immediately after that, we'll then hand over to Honorable Member Dong, who will take questions and inputs and comments from yourselves. And then Honorable Member Mjokwe will then do the vote of thanks, as Member Diacher has requested to leave us early because he got a doctor's appointment. So I'm going to now call the National Department of Public Works to do the presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chairperson, honorable members of the Provincial Legislature, councillors of the Mohali City Municipality, members of the public. My name is Joe Lekala. I'm representing the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure. I will take you through a summarized version of the key aspects of the bill. In other words, the purpose of this presentation is really to present to you an overview in respect of the Expropriation Bill B23B of 2020, as well as touch on key processes in the implementation of the bill. Perhaps at the outset, I should point out that the bill is anchored on the Constitution. And as we all know, the Constitution is the supreme law of the country. Law or conduct inconsistent with it is invalid. Therefore, it is not surprising that the drafters of the bill made sure that the bill mirrors the provisions, especially of the property clause, which is Section 25 of the Constitution. And it is also important to note that because expropriation is provided for in Section 25 of the Constitution, lawful expropriation of property can only occur when it is for a public purpose or in the public interest and subject to the payment of just and equitable compensation. And I want to just highlight the fact that in respect of what I've just indicated regarding public purpose and public interest refers to the nation's commitment to land reform and to reforms to bring about equitable access to South Africa's natural resources. Now, that is the definition that comes from the Constitution. It is cast broadly, deliberately, because in the 1975 Act, the Expropriation Act 63 of 1975, the public interest aspect is not covered. The 1975 Act only deals with public purpose. Now, the Constitution obligates us to observe and undertake expropriations also in the public interest. And public interest is very broad according to the Constitution. And as I've indicated, the bill is aligned to the Constitution. Therefore, we will not, in its contents, unduly limit certain definitions because that would immediately become unconstitutional. One of the issues to highlight also is the aspect of just administrative action, which this bill seeks to give effect to, and which is also a requirement of the Constitution. In terms of just administrative action, it is important to know that persons would be affected by expropriation would be notified as a requirement and will also be given an opportunity to be heard. They will be given an opportunity to make representations and to object to either a notice of expropriation or the process of expropriation as a whole, including the aspect of compensation. Expropriation is a power that is exercised by government through its three spheres. Therefore, there are many expropriating authorities across the three spheres of government. It is not only the Department of Public Works that exercises the power to expropriate. The Department of Public Works and Infrastructure is responsible for the management of the Expropriation Act 63 of 1975. But when this bill is passed into law and replaces the 1975 Act, the Minister of Public Works and Infrastructure will also be responsible for the management of the expropriation bill. But then there are other expropriating authorities who possess the power to expropriate within the functional area of their legislative competence. In other words, within their areas of service delivery. They are empowered in terms of different pieces of legislation to expropriate. Within the local sphere of government, municipalities across the country are empowered to expropriate for purposes connected with areas of their service delivery. In the provinces, different departments of government can expropriate in relation to areas of their legislative competence. The same goes for the national sphere of government, and within the three spheres also, organs of state, which are not necessarily departments of government, are also empowered to expropriate. So, the purpose of this bill is to ensure that there is uniformity of procedure for all expropriations without necessarily interfering with existing powers of expropriation. In other words, because there are many expropriating authorities, this bill will try to create uniformity and harmonize the approach to expropriations by all organs of state and government departments when they expropriate in terms of their different pieces of legislation. In terms of the process, I will quickly deal with the key clauses of the bill. Clauses 1 and 2 mainly deal with definitions and the requirement to negotiate. In respect of definitions, I just want to highlight one or two definitions. I will not deal with all the definitions. The first definition that I think I should touch on, which is very topical, is the definition of property. In the current Act, the property is defined very narrowly. It is defined only in relation to movable, immovable, and intellectual property. However, in this bill, property will be defined very broadly because the Constitution defines property broadly. The Constitution just says property is not limited to land. So the definition of property can be even property that we may not necessarily know right now. And it means each case will be treated on its merits, and there will be no blanket approach in respect of what property is. However, most expropriations, as we know, and especially in the area of operation of government, in respect of the service delivery, most of the property that government expropriate, as we all know, and from the cases in the implementation of the Expropriation Act, it is mainly immovable property. So that is the form of property that we have become accustomed to when it comes to expropriations. But we do not know what the future holds for us. The municipality in Mohali City might decide at some stage to expropriate some kind of a new kind of property that is recognized in the Constitution. And that will remain to be seen when the bill is implemented. So property, as I've said, is defined in very broad terms. The other definition that I've also touched on is the public interest, and I've already referred to that one. And there is also the definition of expropriation in the bill, and which simply says that expropriation is the compulsory taking of property by the state, which simply means that it is the state which can exercise the power to expropriate. No private person or private entity can exercise the power to expropriate. Only the state can expropriate, because this power is a drastic, it is a drastic power that may impact on persons adversely. That is why it is important that only the state should be empowered to exercise this authority, subject to the checks and balances in the Constitution. Now, Clause 2 of the bill makes it compulsory that before expropriation can take place, the expropriating authority should enter into negotiations with the affected party. There will not be any expropriation that goes through without evidence that there has been an attempt to negotiate and acquire the property through that initial process. As I have indicated, Clause 3 and 4 deals with the power of the Minister of Public Works to expropriate. The minister may expropriate in respect of the mandate of the Department of Public Works to provide accommodation, land and infrastructure needs to organs of state, or she may, in very limited instances, expropriate on behalf of some organs of state at their request. That is a very limited power, because, as I've indicated, there are other expropriating authorities who can also expropriate on their own without requesting the Minister of Public Works to expropriate. Clauses 5 and 6 deals with the procedure that must be observed by an expropriating authority before an expropriation can take place. And this procedure includes things like investigation. There has to be an investigation that takes place. And during that investigation, ideally what happens is the needs assessment is undertaken to determine whether the property would be suitable for the requirement, for the required use. And issues around access to the identified property are also important in respect of this procedure and are dealt with in that in clauses 5 and 6. During this process, the attributes or characteristics of the property are also identified, and professionals such as valuers, estate agents, and property practitioners are used to deal with the issue either of determining the value of the property or looking at if it is a specialized kind of property, dealing with those attributes of the property. Clauses 7 to 11 deals with the two types of notices. The first one is the notice of intention to expropriate. And this is the first step in the process to expropriate. When this notice is served, the person is made aware that the expropriating authority has completed the investigation, has done the needs assessment, and now they want to proceed to bring to their attention the fact that they intend to expropriate. The person affected would be given the opportunity in terms when this notice is served, either to agree to the process, to object, or to demand or request more information for consideration. The issue of compensation will also be included in this notice so that the person has got all the information at their disposal. Once the notice of intention to expropriate has been served, the next notice to be served would be the notice to expropriate, in terms of which the decision to expropriate is taken. And what this means is that ownership passes from the owner of the property to the expropriating authority when this notice is served. There is no need, when this notice is served, that the expropriating authority should present proof that the property has been registered in the deeds office. The notice to expropriate suffices as sufficient evidence that the ownership passes. This has been the position throughout the times when expropriation has been taking place in South Africa, starting from as far back as 1912. These notices have been served and their effect and impact has been the same. So this is not a new thing that is being introduced by this bill. The bill is just incorporating one of the features of expropriation that has been there through the times. The requirement in terms of the notice to expropriate is that the affected person must be provided with documents that details the date of payment of compensation, that describes the property that is expropriated, and how the offer of compensation was arrived at, and an indication in respect of any other persons who may have the interest or rights in the property. And also information that makes the affected person aware that if they wish to institute any legal proceedings, they are allowed 180 days, a maximum of 180 days from the date of the notice of service of the notice of expropriation to do that. Clauses 12 to 18 deals with compensation provisions. The compensation provisions of this bill are a reflection also of the provisions in the Constitution. And amongst others, they require that compensation must be just and equitable and include elements such as the current use of the property, the history of the acquisition and use of the property, market value of the property, extent of direct state investment and subsidy in the acquisition and beneficial capital improvement of the property, and the purpose of the expropriation. And over and above these elements, the bill requires that all other relevant factors must be taken into account when compensation is determined. All other relevant factors. So relevant factors could stretch from inconvenience, pure financial loss, and any other factors depending on a particular case. So again, it will be on a case-by-case basis, each case being treated on its own merits. A new development in this bill is the express mention in clause 12.3 that subject to certain circumstances, compensation may be determined at nil if that is just and equitable, and that is covered in clause 12.3 of the bill. Clause 12.3 of the bill lists some of those relevant factors that may justify nil compensation, but that is not limited to only those 5 listed factors. All other relevant factors, as it is indicated there, should or could be looked into as justifying nil compensation. Now, the approach to deal with this is that clause 12 of the bill should be read as a whole. In other words, you should not just zoom on clause 12.3 and say you are determining compensation. When you determine compensation, you read clause 12 as a whole, because clause 12 deals with the approach to compensation, including subsection 3 thereof. There are other clauses, as I've indicated, that compensation is covered from clauses 12 to 18. So some of those clauses, like clause 13, deal with issues around the payment of interest on any outstanding amount of compensation. And clause 14 imposes certain obligations on an owner or affected holder of a right to who receives a notice of expropriation. So in the bill, that is explained very well. So, for instance, the owner must, within 20 working days of receiving notice, indicate whether he or she agrees with the amount of compensation offered. That would be in clause 14, and the rest of the clauses would deal with other compensation aspects, especially clause 16, which covers property which may be subject to mortgage bond or which has been sold and is subject to a deed of sale. There is also provision made in clause 17 for the payment of municipal rates and other charges on the property that would be expropriated. And where there are disputes in respect of the amount of compensation or compensation due, and compensation has already been determined at this stage by the expropriating authority in terms of their administrative decision-making powers, where the parties cannot agree, the amount so determined may be deposited with the master of the High Court, and sometimes it may be necessary to also deposit the amount of compensation with the master of the High Court where there are other beneficiaries of the compensation who cannot be immediately identified, such as where, for instance, the persons who were informal rights holders and they have not been identified at that stage, but compensation has already been determined. That money which is due to those people will be deposited with the master of the High Court. Clause 19 deals with the settlement of compensation disputes through mediation or referral to court. What this does, it is practically giving effect to Section 34 of the Constitution, which refers to access to courts. It is also important to take note that a dispute in respect of compensation does not necessarily suspend the operation of a decision to expropriate. In other words, there may be a dispute in respect of compensation, and that does not necessarily mean the decision to expropriate will be suspended. It will remain valid. Urgent expropriation could also be a feature of the process, and they are provided for in clause 20 of the bill. The nature of the urgent expropriation is that they are temporary, and the period allowed is up to a maximum of 12 months. The minimum period is 12 months, and a maximum of 18 months is allowed by the bill for a temporary expropriation. Compensation is payable for such an expropriation, and this power can be exercised if there is no property available in the property portfolio of the state to meet that requirement. And urgent expropriations will take place in circumstances that are covered by the Disaster Management Act or following an order of court. In terms of clause 21, an expropriating authority may withdraw the decision to expropriate if that is in the public interest or the reason for the expropriation is no longer applicable. The reason why the property was required in the first place is no longer applicable. However, such a withdrawal must take place within 3 months of an expropriation. In other words, after 3 months has expired, it will no longer be permissible for the expropriating authority to withdraw such an expropriation. Or in some instances, where the property has already been registered in the deeds office, that withdrawal can only take place with the consent of the affected party. One of the innovations and an important aspect of this bill is the requirement that the Minister of Public Works and Infrastructure must maintain a register of expropriations. And such a register of expropriations will be a public document. Members of the public will be allowed access to such a register. And this will enable members of the public to know where expropriations have taken place, the nature of such expropriations, the purpose of such expropriations, and how much was expended for such types of expropriation. It will also assist even expropriating authorities across the 3 spheres of government to know what each one of them is doing, because they will know who has expropriated what where, and this will also assist in respect of the streamlining of decision-making in government. The other remaining provisions are really standard provisions that you may know: the creation of an offense where someone violates the bill, and the correction of non-material administrative errors. I will stop here, Chairperson, and thank you.
Thank you very much for that presentation. Before I hand over to Member Tong to facilitate the comments and clarity seeking, we have just joined by Member Fuchs. He will be coming up here, because if you remember well, I said some of our members have traveled overseas and they promised us that they will join us because they only arrived this morning. So Member Fuchs will introduce Member Tong himself when he comes. Thank you very much. Over to you, Member Tong.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to take questions and input about expropriation bill, and I will start this side on my right hand. Those who want to ask questions or inputs can please raise their hands. I'm just taking this side only first, then I will follow this side later on. One, two, three, 4, we have only 4 hands this side. Are we done? Pardon? Papa, kinka this side, then after Mokitlonka this side. At least Harkaba 10 from that side. 5, yes, 5. 5, you know, you are number 5. 6, 7, Mom. 80, Papa, or Amy. I think we are done. Okay, what's up, Papa?
Okay, Chairperson, Nalivito Lagaki Master Push from Sanko. This questions are bill. Chair Ronamo Momohale City. We face serious problems. Problems are the evictions, especially the rural scene. So this bill, it will help Rona really issue ya community. And the Work Property Act. Kibatlizo hore batho ba farm ba re latlhela ko di strateng ba reallocate ko di plekeng tse ding ana ba wela ko withdraw in terms of the bill ke property or ke eng and a titse hore batho ba Mogale City ba teng dana because mo Mogale City re na le lot of open spaces re na le open land and re batlizo hore that land eo but I very excited about Mogale City because harna di pleke harna di even if Dr. Mukhed, you know there's one MEC na Kimurata Dr. Mukhed, I'm not sure where is that lady. Narberekela too much Mogale City. Yeah. Oh, quite no, yeah, because I'm late. Huna late ki disadvantage. I want to about. Yeah, Dr. Mukhed, please man, this open space is still intense. Yeta hore Mogale City is similar to the bylaw because there was this special land management what yabone in. Now by bylaws marlino habas by implement. So kibatli Dr. Mukhed. Hale re koba modi farmo. Ana la repatela na because kutla bua ka bo di compensation and so on. Marnena lo gore koba fela le sa re blele gore ha re go ntsha ko dis land re go isa ko le se ko shuro shaft when ro kubile ro fa bokae for ro compensate tena. So these are the only 3-4 questions and ke di buditse as a civic movement. Sanko tanki ka leboga. Oh, sorry. Kinna Dr. Mukhed. Yeah, kinna Dr.
Sanbonan, local my room, Zondile Maila, Puma Kutung. Into Kala, Funukala Kala. I had copy Asinazo, got an Kulmang and Debalegle Yom Sharp. He had copy Baba, and then he officially Peggy Kulmang and Debalegil had copy Asnaz and Kulmang and Debalegil. And into Kulmangaz and Kulmange Act and Kunabandaba Dalalan. Ngicela ukuthi nisilungisele ukuthi masiphuma la siphume siphethe I hard copy. Nginombuzo ngoba ubaba sezikhaverile ezinye ngoba I West Rand kune building elukuthi manje azisetshenziswa ezinye uzokuthiwa zi-owners i-mine but abasebenzisi kodwa sinabantwana abalala ezitradeni ukuthi manje kwenzakalani and ziningi building ezinye ziyabhidlizwa ezinye awazi kwenzakalani ezinye kubulawa abantu ngaphakathi kuzo ukuthi kwenzakalani then ke ezinye besizawungena kuzo manje nikhuluma into eziningi kakhulu I-act nani bese engage manje ne-invitation esiyithole late, besithandile uku-engage but kodwa ke anyway akunanix kodwa besicela i-hard copy. Besicela nisi-addressele le unused buildings nalezi kuthiwa zi-owners imine but ebengazisebenzisi.
Sanibonani. Bengicela umbuzo wami uzoba nje short and sweet. My first question, bengifuna ukwazi ukuthi is this bill applying kuma all mines la khona abozamazama? We know that we're facing issue yamazamazama even today. So we want to understand ukuthi because of he's speaking about the property. This property were owned by the mines. So what's going on right now? Is the state doing something about those mines or about those properties, if I may say it's a property? Secondly, I want to understand that this bill, does this saying is going back to apartheid now, whereby if only you can afford to pay whatever property that you're living in, then are you going to be throwing out from that property or what exactly? I wish someone can stand up there and explain in an African language, because khona abantu abakhuluma isiZulu, khona labantu babuya Setswana. Basa khona ukhotlhaloganya when we speaking about this expropriation about the land and the property itself. So I want the clarity on that one. Thank you very much. And before ngihamba ngicela ukuyazi ukuthi this bill is still saying willing sell, willing buy na. Thank you very much.
Sanibonani. Ngegama nguLehlohonolo obhedwa kwaKhumani. Angizi ukukhuluma isiNgisi ngikhule naso. Angizi ukukhuluma iAfrikaans ngikhule nayo. Do forgive me. I speak all 11 languages, but today I feel like speaking my father tongue, not my mother tongue. So I'm gonna go all Zulu here. Okokuqala ngiqhamuka Western area, Western region corridor. Ngiqhamuka eVaterpan. My brother here has touched on some sensitive information vele nami ngithi ngizoyishare. Inkinga esibhekene nayo ukuthi umhlaba ukhona, izindlu zakhiwe zivandalizwa wozamazama. And kubhlungu ngoba ezinye zale ndawo ziyakwazi ukakha ikusasa lengane zethu. Kepha asisakwazi ukuyisebenzisa ngenxa yozamazama. So ke sengibuya ngibone ngathi ozamazama they are expropriating the land better than the government. They are doing a very wonderful job and the government is doing nothing about it. Asiyekeni ukucambelana ma. I live in a Gulf estate that every day when I wake up, I feel like resurrecting it. But I can't. Asikwazi. Ngenxa ukuthi asinawo amandla wokuyithathela inqumo. Ngingafake my community endabeni zami. Ngina 5 years ngihlala eVaterpan. 5 years I've been filling out ama petition form. Lokho ngiyagcwalisa nje. Kuthiwa hey bathi sigcwalise silwela indawo, hey bathi sigcwalise silwela indawo. Ngasuka ekhaya ngithi ngiyofuna umsebenzi le emamayini eWestern area. Sengina 30 years manje angaqashwa. Le ndawo isijike yaba ikhaya lami lesibini. Senginakwami mina ngokwami umbono ngoba ngina 5 years ngihlala kuyo le handla. Akekho umlungu okhe wathi kimi ngiphume lapha engibheke emehlweni. So ke for some of us thina abantu abafana nami uKhumalo abaneminyaka engango5 behlala endaweni kodwa balwela into enye. Namhlanje niza ngomthetho othi uzosivikela. Nahlulwa yini ukuyenza leyo nto 5 years ago? Nahlulwa yini ukuyenza lento 5 years ago? Niyehluleka kepha anifuni ukuvuma ukuthi niyehluleka.
Isisombululo sikhona niyasiziba. Kukumanje amaphoyisa akhona kunyundulwa amawarden for in. Kusasa amaphoyisa zabe bathi bayastrike ngoba imali yabo incane. Anicashi ngani emaphoyiseni ninyundula imiholo yabo. So siyayibona le ndlela ye-system yethu le yokuthi makuqhamuka inkinga nina aniyingqo kiyo niyathumela. Angaze mina ngathumela ingane yami next door ngingazi ukuthi yofica bani. So angazi nini ukuthi labantu enibathumelayo bayazi yini ukuthi bayoficani la baya khona. Abazilutho ngoba kumanje sikhuluma nani. Bona bekho la labantu nina nibathumayo. Imihlaba iyazidla, izindlu ziyabola. Asingayi indawo khona la eMogale City la ngikhulela khona. La town hall White House. I've stepped so many times into this building and hearing politicians speak lies to people. Hambani Wentworth Park Laneway. Ngaphe Laneway. Kune hostel lapha bathi umqandashi. I grew up in that hostel. I grew up kuleya hostel. Kepha namanje kusenabantu abahlala kiyo leya hostel engekho right ukuthi bangahlala kiyo. Anikake bayenzeli iplan. Mind you, I grew up there. I'm 30 years old today. How many years has it been? Amamayini ayafika bathatha lokho bakuthathako bashiya i-infrastructure. Makuza kuma closure wabo nina niyabayeka ba destroy le infrastructure. Kodwa niyakhala namhlanje ukuthi abantu bentsundu abanazo indawo zokuhlala. Kanti yapi lenqola? Ngicela nje ukubuza ukuthi iyapi lenqola? Zikhona indawo ezingabhidlizwa with no intentions to be rebuilt. Zikhona indawo engeke uvele nje uyibhidlize. You first need to assess it. But ngombono wami ngathi lama mines wabhidlizelwa nje ukuthi wonke businessmen nje badla imali. Ama contractors badla imali. Angithi manje we falling into this cooperative world. So kudliwa imali ngama contractor. Yes, kuyasapiwa bro wami. Kuyasapiwa bro wami. Kuyasapiwa. So my plead to you today ukuthi ngicela nihambe niye emqandashi. Niyobuka isimo salabantu abahlala emqandashi. Manje suka lapho nihambe niye Waterpan. Niyobuka ukuthi sihlala kanjani. Manje suka nihambe niye Fentes Post. Niyobuka ukuthi abantu base Fentes Post bahlala kanjani. Nihambe indawo lezi kakumayinwa kizo and stop telling us that our land is dolomitic. That's just an excuse enisebenzisayo. The whole of N12 is dolomitic ukuya ngami. Because wonke lama mine afoli line lapha N12. So stop using this dolomitic excuse to remove us from fertile lands. Some of us want to become future farmers. And Waterpan is the perfect place to farm. So njengoba ngisho kanje, I am leaving Waterpan in a body bag or compensated. Because now my children's roots are there. Sekuyikhaya labantwana bami. So for you people to remove me from Waterpan, nama miners Waterpan, should they see this, they must know. EyakwaKhumalo, uMbulazi, umzilikazi kaMashwabane. Uyophuma seke yakwaGuqanyawo eWaterpan. Ngiyabonga.
Ayikhona. Insizwa kithi. Dumela batho ba bana. Mfowethu ka language ya gago o nkgatlhile jo. Ke thabile ebile ka go bua ka language ya kwa lona. Ke gola ka Tiba ke re Thokozane. Good, I don't know how to call it. Is it afternoon or to the higher people there? Mare ke kopa bua ka language ya ka le nna go gae. Cause re tswa ko sekolong. You sent us to school, remember? Don't forget that. It's hurting. Uzwe utlwe ngwana wa motho o montsho a lla ka lefatshe la kwa bone. Ore a ikhenya ka lefatshe la kwa bone mara la sa le owning. Ha in charge. By the way, ke nna Tshepo wa kwa Ramela, ke tlhaga ko Morafong City, where we call a town a deteriorated town, only because of we are not being given back our land. I wonder, this bill, it will speak lenna as a young person. By the way, I'm a traditional practitioner, ngathwasa isangoma samadlozi. Mangikhuluma ngomhlaba ngiyakhala ngesintu sami. Khala ngokwami, khala ngeyonke into yami ngedlozi lami. Ngibua le ka bana baka. Ke tla godisa yang bana baka ko ke sa itseng teng. O go ke sa nna ke sa ikitseng teng. Ha ke re ke lo bua ka issue ya this bill. There's a young person here who spoke about a willing buyer, a willing seller bill, which was never implemented. Now, na eskilemocha wa this area, the West Rand, lesis khenangayo. Re bitsa the business people, but re assist go eradicator issue ya body zamas. But there is not the policy that speaks on our behalf as the originally beneficiaries of this area. So ikhuluma kanjani leyo? First question. The second question ukuthi na as a young person kinale program on my head as a farmer ngizo benefita kanjani from this bill? I'm a question man, Nick. I thank you very much.
Hello, hello. Yes. Dumelang bagolo. Ke utlwagala sentle. Ka boikokobetso ka tlhompho ke nna Ntate Kubu, Matthews Kubu. Ke Motlokwa. Ke tswa ko Carltonville. Ko Khutsong. Ko Merafong ko di mining. Ke botlhoko gore ke tle fa ke nka se tle fela ke sa tshwenyegane. Ke tshwenywa ke tsela ya meepo ya di mine. Di mine pila di tsone di tsa tshwenye gagolo. Ntho e tshwenyang gagolo ke tsamaiso ya di masepala tsa rona mo rona. Di masepala tsa rona di sharp mo rona, di re treat sentle. Di mine ntse di ntsha ditšhelete le ko tshimologong ya di mine tsa di tla fa di fitlile tsa tla di tlisa tsela ya go patelwa ga rona ke yone ke Department of Labor or keng tsela e batho ba tshwanetse ba patelwe ka yona. Ba bangwe ba ganela mara ke ka nako e ne sentse go tshwere batho ba ba sweu, the African maburu. In the nako eo ene batho ba re kreile ntse re le teng mo plekeng yone e. Carltonville ne ntse re dula fo ebile nna ke Motlokwa mo Potchefstroom ele kaofela ele. It's called Tlokwe, belongs to the Batlokwa. And then ra ropiwa ke batho ba ne ba re tshwere nako eo gore ba age di mine mo plekeng eo ka tota ya atlega gore di mine di agiwe e be le gore ge batho ba ne ba dula fo di mine di agilwe pele ga batho ba dutse pele ga di mine di agiwe. Morago gona nonyana batho ba tlositswe fo ko Deelkrala kwa gona le pleke bitswang Deelkrala ke motho a ka fo ke tlo lwanela lefatshe leo ke tlo batla gore ke patelwe kapa ke kresimo mo dimo ga lefatshe la go gae. Dikgwedi tse fetileng le dijara tse fetileng tsele gona le batho ba bang ba bantseng kana mo re lona le a giant. The mining industry is a giant company. Ke company e tonna ya bo Anglo-American ya bo le ba tswang ko mafatsheng a mantsi ale. They came with money and then ba fita ba tla ka tšhelete ba tlo e planta mo. Batho ba pleke eo ha se bone ba benefitang. And then gone yaanong ne ke kopa gore the mining re tsere lefatshe gona nong re le batho ba bantsho. Ha re tsere lefatshe yana ha re kry sepe mo lefatsheng le ne tshwantse there must sonke be gona le transformation. The department e leng teng gona no e dutseng fa e ke be tshwantse be ile ko bathong not go kgakala. The Department of the Welfare, the Department of Justice, the Maponisa, they are far from the township. Go bathong ba leng teng. The social worker, they are not. Ba go kgakala go ditoropong kwa. Rona we are in townships. They were supposed to be to the people. Maponisa, they were supposed to be to the people. Mo bathong. Mara ha ba yo ko bathong. Tsatsi le leng le tlo batho ba they will ntwa e batho ba le ba e lwanelang ko makeisheneng ya di zama ya di crime ya di eng. It will come back ko lona. Because rona re itse itwanela ke re kgonne go utlwa matsadi a yone, thupa ya yone le eng ya yone ebile re kgona go e tlo boela re ba re tshaba re dula le bone ditsotsi tse. Re dula le bone di syndicate tse. Ha no ha ba kgone go retsa sepe, they will go di santini go ditoropong go. And I will be happy by then. And I pray gore dilo tse di tle go. Yaanong taba ya tšhelete ya mafatshe. Ke batla le ha ke tswa mo ke be ke nna le re tsamaile re groupa ko khutsong re lo lwanela lefatshe. Re ile ko Department of ko teng ko go claimwang land claim. Ba e kwetse. Ba re kwalletse ko ntle ba re di ngata thata le tla ema ba busy ba serve dilo tsa 20 tsa khale ka bo 19 ka bo 80 something kwa. They are busy with those piles. And so rona ba re kwalla ko ntle ke tla gape mona there will be a progress. There must be something going on. Ba aksa ya go departmenting le ko Pretoria, I went there. So ke tla mona no ke bulanela pleke ele ke batla go tswa mo le mpeleletse gore the 1 2 3 days tshimologo ya yone le pheletsa yone ke tshwantse ke kry clue mo. Re tla mona re batla clue ya no ba re kwaletse kwale ke ditsotsi. People are crooks. The very same people ba re ba kgeta mo re ba bea go dimo kwale, mark my word, they are criminals. Thank you batho.
Good afternoon. My name is Mantash Mosese. I was born at Magaliesburg, and our parents were removed at that land in 1950. Before we went to Wimpy. I just want to ask Doctor, there's a guy by the name of Michael. He was developing the place, and Mazzoni stopped it, the owner of Valley Lodge. How can a foreigner stop the project that's gonna produce or hire the people of Magaliesburg? If it was a black man, he was going to be arrested because he's got money and he's a foreigner, a white foreigner. They didn't stop it. Doctor, please help us. We want that land back. In Swanaville, these Ethiopian guys, they are building houses. But if it was Wanawalekeshene, you people, you could stop him. You are busy giving Baruti Baba Zalwani a land. Why can't you give us the land? Because we are doing service delivery for these children. Bazalwani banali ing. They must apply the land in a proper way. I will give you They must apply land in a proper way. Please, thank you.
Thank you. I think was okay.
Good day or good afternoon.
Nka thabela ho bua ka leleme la me la setso. Bagolo ba me ke tswa ke le Merafong City, ke nna Daddy wa kwa Garabele. Ke tsallwa mo Khutsong, Carltonville. Ke tlile mo ke utlwa go bua ka mafatshe le tlhabollo ya mafatshe. Mo re dulang teng go a wela. Go wela yalo. O fumane motho o dula mo ntlong ya 8 room. Ntlo ya gagwe ha e wela. O iswa ko ntlong ya 2 room. Ntlo ya 2 room e tlo kenya furniture e le family e kaofela na. Ha eno bakeng. Ha go iwa ko toropong. Ko toropong go na le dintlo tse ownwang ke batho ba sebetsang ko masepala wa Merafong. Ba bang they are coming from Eastern Cape, ba kentse mabota go rentiswa mo dintlong tsa masepala tse leng gore di silwe ke di mine. Bagolo ko toropong ya rona ya Carltonville di mine tse ka mole di sile dintlo. Dintlo tseo di ownwa ke batho ba bang, the individuals tsa kwa masepala. Batho ba sebetsang kwa masepala wa Merafong City ba owna dintlo. O kry motho o i-1 o owna ntlo tse 5. Batho ba wetswe ke dintlo kwa. Batho ba idaftisitse mathata a motho mo ntsho kako. Go bua fela nnete bagolo, batho ba dutse mo ba dulisitse leshano. Ha e ntho ba kopaneng le lona ka yona. Ba tlile go tlo deliver maka. Go tlo bua fela nnete. Ko Khutsong kwa tsama bona disaster. Ntlo go e wela ka jeko. Nagana mme o mokana. A tseiwa a lo beiwa ko holong a dula a le 1. Ntlo ya ge e wetse ka baka la gore tšhomi ya mang e kentse le bota ko ntlong e lekanetseng mme o gore ka fudugisetswa ko yona. Dintlo di kwetswe ke batho ba kwa masepala ba itse le bone ba dutse mo. Batho ba dutse mo they know very well gore dilo tse tsegalang mo di masepaleng tse ke di eng. Go na le di mine kwa gwate mine ke DL Kral le mapodisa teng a tshaba go ya mo. Di zamazama di belonga there. Di dula there. Di etsa mekete le di boso tsa mapodisa le di magistrate di tsamaya mo. Go bua fela nnete batho ba dutse mo. They know this chaos e tsagalang around Merafong City and West Rand as a whole. Go bua fela nnete. Ntho e tsagalang mo Merafong le ntho e tsagalang mo West Rand. Ke ntho e tsagalang kwa. Go jewa le di zamazama, le di setswa le dijo ko mokoting. Ba itse batho ba. Ene le batswa ka ntle. I'm sorry to say that go na le batho ba tswang ko ntle, our neighbors Africans ba deliverwang dijo ko mokoting, and then o tlo shebe bana ba mo gae ba lapa. Batho ba tsamang ka di verpark batho ba ko ntle. Gona no bana ba mo gae mo ba etsa bana le makula ka baka la tlala, poverty e tliswang ke batho ba. Batho ba tlisitse poverty ba. Batho ba tlisitse poverty. Mathata a tlala a tlile ka batho ba. Gona no ntho e buang mo lona ke ntho e tlo etsagalang after how long? Neng? Ha go etsagetse eng? Ka le kopa ba gaetso. Ke kopa gore ntho engwe le engwe bontate ba ha ba bua le lona. O bo mo beile butshi mo gore o bua ka ntho e tlo etsagalang neng. Kapa o tlotlela o tliswa ke kgora ya kwa gago. O tlotlisa di baki le di sutu. Ba rata di blue light batho ba. Ke tsone ntho tse ba di ratang. Ba rata o gatiwa ke di ministera kaofela kere. Exactly. Bagolo ke kopa a re sebeletseng setšhaba le tlogele go tloetsa setšhaba dipopae tsa lona. Re kgatetse ke lona.
Dumelang bagolo. My name is Tammy J. I have a question. My question about this bill, land expropriation. I hope those who acquired the land from us, they never paid anything. Instead, they pointed us with guns and they took our land. So now, my question is, why should we negotiate to expropriate our land? And secondly, I'm saying, why should we compensate them when we have to expropriate our land? So I'm for the bill that says expropriation of land without compensation. That is the land. This land is ours. It was taken from us with a barrel of a gun. So we have to expropriate this land. If it means we have to go and get the guns, yes, the guns, we can get them. We can get them. AK is there, Makarov is there. We will use them and to expropriate our land without compensation, as this land was taken from us with a barrel of a gun. Thank you.
Dumelang Africa. Mine is just short, man. In relation to the bill itself. Because I don't know as to whether perhaps my understanding of English kiona in Shapang. Because when I'm looking at it, there is a potential of this legislation dispossessing.
Sorry, sicela igama baba.
Okay, o hense ditire ke dula mo Mogale City. My question in relation to the expropriation bill. I'm fearing one thing. Ya hore when I look at it, there is a potential of it dispossessing the dispossessed. In a sense, ya hore there are disputed lands. They were never restored to the original owners. Now my question is to say, what is the bill saying in relation to those disputed lands? And they were never restored back to the original owners. And now, what we are seeing, there is a trend by the moneyed people to take those lands. Hence then my question is to say, how is the bill or this act then going to protect the original owners? By mafatshe a bona e sa busetswe back to them. Yeah, that is my submission. Thank you.
Thank you. We now coming on this side. Can I get hands? 1, 2, 2, ma'am. 3, 4, yes, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, Papa, 11, 12, 13, 13, 13. Number 13. Please start by giving your name. And let's mind time. Number 1, please start.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Alderman Jacqueline Panel. I'm from Mukhali City. I represent the residents of Ward 37. Thank you very much. The first point I would like to make is that I feel that this process is misleading the public because there is an act, the Land Restitution Act of 1994. This bill does not address restitution. That's the first point I would like to make. The second point I would like to make is property speaks to an economy of a country. So private property rights are being violated, and we are going to be sitting with the economic crisis in this country. Thirdly, when we go to section 12, and the presenter said that we must speak to section 12 in its entirety. Now, if you read section 12:3, it states very clearly it must be just and equitable, for no compensation to be paid where land is expropriated in the public interest, having regard to all relevant circumstances, including but not limited to. And I would like to repeat those words, including but not limited to. Those are the key words in this section of the Act. Because if you read A, B, C, D, E, those are the only 5 points. But what does the word mean, but not limited to? Furthermore, I would like to also say that section 12 eliminates consensus and usurps the authority of judiciary by predetermining the amount of compensation to be given, nil, in defined circumstances. Furthermore, to add to that, this bill was not passed. The Constitution was not changed. The Constitution is the superseding law. This bill will be unconstitutional because it is subservient to the Constitution. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dominique Panel. I am from a resident of Mukhali City and also one of the members of the West Rand District Municipality. I have 2 questions. One question being to the legal advisor. Which in one of the processes, it said that then it would be handed to the legal advisor of the Gauteng legislature. Would it not be correct to say that we as people should not just trust any legal advisors that are just from any organization of South Africa? Should we, as the South Africans, not trust the Constitutional Court in them saying that whether it is legal or not legal? And then my second question is, there seems to be some sort of inconsistency with the clauses. As clauses 7 to 11, which is the notice of intention to expropriate, the property will be expropriated, you'll get your notice, etc., etc. Now you have within 6 months, 180 days from the notice to take it to court. Now, let's say you receive your notice 3 months in, then you've only got 3 months to take it to court. And then you said later in clause 21 that at the 3-month point, I don't know whether that was from the notice, it wasn't explained quite clear there, but then it says you only have 3 months to withdraw a complaint or anything of the expropriation. So we need some clarity there as well. So you're only going to give 6 months from the notice to take it to court, but you're going to withdraw it 3 months in. It seems to be there's some inconsistency with the clauses there, and that just needs to be checked. Thank you.
Dumelang. Lebitso la ka ke Aida Lephatsi. Ke dula Waterpane Ot 17. Rona mathata a rona ko hore re fuwe lefatshe la ko Waterpane because mine o tlo bo o hira bana ba banyane 18 to 35. Rona from starting 45, 46, 40 ha re kgone ho fumana mosebetsi. Re batswadi re di parents tsa bana ba banyenyane. So rona ha re sena mo re dulang teng, re sena mosebetsi, e re mmaene ha o fihla o hira lefatshe la rona ba sebetsa ka lona ba hira bana. Re na le batswadi, mme wa ka o na le 94 years, o dula mo le mo ke dulang teng, ha ana bodulo. Di mmaene ha di tloa di batla o dilisa di demolisha dintlo tsa bona. Ene rona bontata rona ke di ex-miner tsa moo. So rona ha ba tloa ba sebedisitse lefatshe la rona, ba ruile ka lona, rona re ye kae? Ao ha ba sa ba le willing ya hore fela okay, e re busetse ho setjhaba sa rona, re ba siele dintlo tsena, mpe ba itulele mona, ba phele teng, ba zame ho etsa di-agriculture, ba zame ho etsa eng. Especially ke buile hore rona batho ba bo 40 to 45, a re sa thola mosebetsi, ho bua ka 18 to 35 batho ba thola mosebetsi. Ana rona re tshwanetse re phele jwang? Ana rona re tshwanetse re reke dintlo tseo ka eng hoba ha rena tjhelete ha re sebetse?
Dumelang bagolo, nna ke Piseletso Lelatsa, ke tloa Waterpane. Ke eme monana ka nkare ke ka pelo e bohloko. Rona re na le bothata ka Waterpane. Re dula mo lefatsheng le le hore ho tloa khale re ntse re nkuwa re iswa di-court. Ha re fihla court ho thwe lefatshe ha lena monga lona. Re sa kgone ho fumana motho a nang le title deed. Re nkuwe ke mine, re lahletswe court. Ka mora nako ha o tlameha hore ntho e tswele pele court e se fella fela moyeng, ha o sa tseba hore na e fella kae. Ha re a botsa ho thwe government e buisane le mine, ba buisana ka lefatshe la rona, lona le re dulang ho lona ba santsane ba lokisa. Empa ho ntso le jwalo re a makala, o tla fumana ntse re fuwe di-eviction letter, ntse re tebelwa fela ho itswe ho ntso le mo dipuisanong. Empa mine ntse re thola di-eviction letter, ho ntso ho le mo dipuisanong. Re kopa le kenelle tabeng enana, le re thuseng hobane jwale ha re sa tseba hore na methati e nepahetseng ya hore re ye ho yona ke efeng, kapo le re bolelle hore na re tlameha hore re kwakwate menyako efeng, e le hore re seke ra dubana le ntho e le nngwe fela e re tshwarisang hlooho ya hore re phela re fuwe di-eviction letter ka nako tsena kaofela. Empa ho thwe ho ntso le mo dipuisanong. Jwale ha ho le mo dipuisanong di-eviction letter ke tsa eng? Hoba re ka tlohelwa ra dula ka kgotso. Ke a leboha.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Sharice Rocha. I represent a landowners association of more than 100 landowners registered in Muldersdrift. I just want to say thank you to Maureen for accepting our 19-page submission last night. At least I can see that some government departments do actually function. Others don't. I can clearly state that. I just want to indicate that this bill, sorry with my notes. This bill is not going to pass constitutional muster. Unfortunately, this is an attempt, basically, to confiscate property. Now, when we talk about property, it's not necessarily when we're talking about land. Everybody needs to remember you've got a public pension fund that is available, they will be able to expropriate your public pension fund. For most of the municipal workers that are sitting here, that is a realistic fact that can happen in the future. What you need to understand as well is that it's taken how many years? This act is supposed to be replacing the 1975 Act. How long ago was that 1975 Act in place? It's taken this long, and this political will, basically amounting to nothing, in relation to trying to remedy that. It won't, the application of law, all right, in terms of what needs to be done in terms of this act. When it comes to talking about property, the definitions are very vague. The process in and of itself is not explained correctly. And make no mistake, this is confiscation of property, it's not expropriation of property. And that's what the Constitution is there to protect all of us. This act is going to affect the poorest of the poor. It's not going to affect the people in Sandton. It's not going to affect the landowners. It's going to affect the poorest of the poor people. And that's what everybody needs to understand.
Number 6. I'm number 5. Are you 5? I'm 5. They've Jackie squeezed in. There we go. Hi, good morning, sorry. I'm Councillor Cochrane from Mogale City, and I am speaking on behalf of the residents in Ward 23, Muldersdrift. To start with, we obviously state that we support land restitution and land redistribution. We support efforts to undo the terrible legacy forced land dispossessions which still reverberate through our society. What we do not support and cannot support is this bill which we are commenting on here today in its current format. This bill must simply be abandoned lest we condemn ourselves to ever greater levels of poverty and inequality. The bill in its current form threatens the very foundations on which the South African economy was built. The bill does not speak to what the public purpose or interests are and how the land must be used. This leaves the door open for abuse as there are no clear definitions, which could lead to exploitation. This would include property such as pensions, patents, copyrights, etc. This is clearly in line with the socialistic agenda. The proposed bill is in fact deprivation of property in favor of the political elite in its current form and not expropriation for public interest concerns. It is a cynical attempt to amend the Constitution via the back door. This alone renders this bill unconstitutional. The bill cannot, through ordinary legislation, seek to amend a constitutional imperative that has failed to pass amendment processes. Instead of righting the wrongs of apartheid, the bill, as it stands, will perpetuate the evils. What must change is the opposite of that proposed, namely all land and property held by previously dispossessed people should become fully owned and protected against any form of expropriation. The most vulnerable group in society needs the continued protection of the Constitution, not the meaningless promises of current politicians who even now have no control over who implements the power to expropriate at the lowest levels of government. It will unleash a staggering potential for personal vendettas, corruption, and victimization. Alternative, morally sound, and economically rational solutions to expropriation without compensation exist. Issue title deeds for those today leasing on state land. Redistribute unused or underused state land. Repeal laws that hinder land reform, like the Subdivision of Agriculture Land Act. The ruling party has blamed the failure of the current land distribution policy on high prices and obstinate farmers. But land redistribution has failed not because of a faulty policy, but because of the ruling party's incompetence. Even when the government has succeeded in distributing land, much of it has ceased to be economically viable. According to the government's own statistics, some 50% of land reform projects have failed. A new approach to land reform in South Africa requires privatization, not expropriation. Some 25% of South African land is owned by the government. but no serious attempt has been made to determine the viability of the government land for redistribution. Typically, land reform proposals are presented as noble pursuits to erase wealth inequality between classes that develop due to historic injustices. Productive, fertile land no longer ends up in hands of skilled farmers, food prices become hyperinflated and disrupt employment. It hurts the poorer communities the government intended to uplift in the first place. I believe a post-apartheid society shouldn't let its passion for solving issues afflicting certain communities cloud its ability to see beyond the short-sighted gratification this bill offers. Thank you.
It's a number system, not a seating system. Good morning, thank you. Good morning, Acting Chairperson. I want to see you and honourable members of the legislature. Thank you for gracing us with your presence, fellow councillors and residents of Mogale City. My question is a question of phenomenal clarity, and it's directed at Public Works. Public Works last year, a year ago in 2022, it was stated by the Minister of Public Works that Public Works is in utter chaos. So it's not any new news. The year before that, 1,300 properties owned by Public Works were hijacked or illegally occupied. So how is it that a bill such as the expropriation bill, where the government wants to go out and get more property, can't even take care of what it already has? I'm shocked. Just a stone's throw away from here, around the corner, I can take you to a property, 49 Bloemfontein. It's Public Works owned building. That building is falling apart. Families of about 45 residents are sharing one toilet, one ablution facility. That building should be condemned and closed down. Why does government want to go seek further property when it cannot take care of what it already has? So if Public Works can answer us that, will be greatly appreciated. This appropriation bill as well seems to be the general consensus as another mechanism for government to go loot. Thank you, I submit.
Your name is, sir?
Councillor Mark Trump for Ward 20, Mogale City. Thank you.
Siyabonga. Igama lami nguSibusiso wakaKhumalo. Ngibuya eRand West Municipality, particularly in Western area. Chairperson, siyabonga ngepresentation yakho neteam yakho oyenzileyo. But to us as the poor of the poorest, it doesn't mean anything to us. As long as umhlaba sibe singenawo. A black child, you know, expropriation of land without compensation, it is a justice to a black child. It is a justice to the majority of South African. So now, I cannot speak a lot about ngezinto engazazi. I will speak about Western area where I come from, whereby umhlaba uyazidla phaya. Is mine azibi accountable. Nobody obamba is mine accountable. DMRE, it is a toothless dog that doesn't bite. Siyacela. Nina government, you are the one enenza ama illegal invaders. Because as much as ngisho ngithi lo mthetho lo owenu nizos expropriatela uminister and whoever uzozenzela, then what about the poor of the poorest, us? What about us? What is the benefit for us? Colleagues, santhuma nina eParliament yenzani izinto eziright. Anisihlalelanga lapho. It's us that who have voted for you, and you know the mandate, and you know exactly what do we want. So, colleagues, masiyekeleni ukuwaste ama state resources. Niyazi umntana umuntu omnyama ukuthi ufuna ntoni, ufuna umhlaba. Yenzani ukuthi umhlaba uze kuphi, uze ebantwini. Ningazo sixelela ngongco kankulu lapha abazo protector amasaka wabo lapho bazenze as if they used to participate kuma public participation. But bakwenza lokho just because of ukuthi beze bazo defender the very same land le esifunayo. Because uma ngabe nithi umhlaba okanye property mayibuselwe with a compensation. Who compensated our forefathers? Ubani wabacompensate? Colleagues, mina I'm still saying lapha eGauteng nini enenza ukuthi kube nama illegally occupiers, kube nama invaders. And we are still going to do that as long as you don't want to listen to us while we are staying in the mines. Umhlaba mningi laphaya, ama property maningi laphaya. Those people that are closing down these mines, they are demolishing. Here in Rand West City, we don't have a university. Asina university. Ama university wathola le, but we've got a land here. These mines, they are closing down, they are going. Colleagues, you were traveling with R28, if I'm not mistaken. We have seen ukuthi is mine is enzentoni lapha. Lapa, we are left with a scrap land, whereby today government is coming, hey, what, we'll expropriate the land, so and so will expropriate the land. For who? For who? For who? And the colleagues, Nina, we know you. Nina, we've got ama farms, we've got ama plus, Nina. Tina, nishiftisela gupi, kuma RDP. Tina, colleagues, nislahlela gupi, kuma RDP. The development that we know in South Africa, it is the development, Yama RTPs, 2 rooms and the shacks. Those are the developments that we know. And the colleagues, make no mistake, Sianas, Nitunywe seat lap, where you are, those blue lights are our expense. Those blue lights are our vote. So colleagues, yenzani into right. Because if you don't do, nathi on the ground, ngeke size silawuleke. Vele ukufa siyazi. Our brothers, our mothers were shot before and were killed, and even us, we are not even scared to be killed for the issue of land. Because of siyasokola namhlanje, sisokolisiwe. Yazi bengizokhuluma nezinye izinto, but anyway, expropriation of land without compensation, it is the justice to the black child. That is my closure. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you. I'm Eldman Blake from Rand West City, and I'm here about the security of tenure. So even if you are given land in future, government can take it away from you. So don't be too fooled about not having land at the moment, and if you do get land and you purchase it through hard work, government will in future be able to take it away from you. So there's lots of land, government possesses lots of land, and this bill is perhaps not very good internationally received because people will see expropriation without compensation and they'll get the wrong idea and they'll say, why should I come and invest in Mohali or in Rand West in Marifong? Because if I put a nice factory up, the government will come and take it away from me. My way of looking at this is that it needs to go back to Parliament, get re-ratified. And I think in the Constitution side, perhaps the people who do own land in government should come forward, especially like the Polas and the Nkandlas and a couple of the other sort of places, and let the fear of that be put into these politicians who actually believe that they can get votes by just abusing the poor. I thank you.
Sanbonani. Sanbonani futhi. Mina ngegama uJoshua kaMkwena. Angeke ngikhulume okuningi ngoba abasebakhulumile sebekhulume lokho bengizokukhuluma. Kodwa bengithanda ukuthi ngiyabonga honorable chair ukuthi ukhona lapho ne portfolio ne team yakho lapho phambili. Okokuqala namhlanje asizodingida ukuthi ubani ofunde kangcono ubani ongafundanga kangcono. Asizanga futhi lana ukuzodingida ukuthi ubani owaziyo futhi ubani ongazi. Esize ngakho namhlanje ukulungisa ama mistakes ayenzakele before 1994. Because ngo 1994 mase kuziswa inkululeko umuntu omnyama ebengahlukunyezwa nje inkululeko yesipolitiki kodwa behlukunyezwa na ukudinga umhlaba. Lo mhlaba esisawukhalela namanje, which is 30 years back, akunamehluko owenzakele. Manje bengithanda ukuthi kini nina government esiyivotelayo ngaso sonke isikhathi yazini ukuthi okwamanje sihlezi phezulu kwebhomo. Enele bhomo le nini na nini inga explode. Uku explode kwale bhomo angeke noyiwana sinde ngisho even nina nise parliament angeke nisinde. Now ama country athola inkululeko before iSouth Africa ithola inkululeko. Now we were in the same position esikuyo manje. Kusho ukuthi manje nina nithi South Africa nayo mayihambe kulendlela lamanye ama country ewahambile. Ngilana mina ngirepresenta iVaterpan. iVaterpan yi-area la bekuhlala khona abantu bebesebenze imine. Labantu esikhuluma ngabo bebesebenze imine, abanye babo abasaphili because of izinto ukugula bakuthole ngokusebenza imine. Ekufeni kwabo kusala thina abantwana babo. The very same thina sizofa nathi sishiye ingane zethu. Then iba i-vicious cycle. Awukho umehluko owenziwayo yi-government engiyivotele mina. Manje ngithi kule bill le eseyikhona manje ukuthi since from 1912 ukufika manje isa exista. Le bill ayisize ngalutho ayikhulumi nami. Ikhuluma noNgcowankulu abakwazi ukuthatha imali zabo basebenzise imithetho ukuthi basivikele nokuthi basinyathelele thina sengabantu abamnyama. Whether the land is achieved with compensation or without compensation, the bottom line ukuthi umhlaba mawubuyele kubanini bawo. If I may ask nina government engiyivotelayo, le compensation leni ukhuluma ngayo eniphinde nigcokise ngama act isiza ngani thina? I-compensation yani? Ngoba thina into esiyifuna sifuna umhlaba. Into esiyidingayo umhlaba. Lesilungisene esikhulu lesa sisize ngalutho thina. Into esiyifunayo umhlaba. Ngoba impilo yomuntu omnyama isemhlabeni. Umnotho womuntu omnyama usemhlabeni. Lesilungisene eninika sona lana asisizwa nokuthi sithini. Ngoba manje thina njengamanje silambile angeke sisuthe lama terminology wenu. Angeke sisuthe lama legal systems wenu eniwa impose kuthina ukuthi singafumani esikufanele. Njengoba ngisho ngithi ngirepresent iVaterpan akusiyimi kuphela badlulile abomama baseVaterpan. So ngajabula ukuthi after le meeting le nihambe niyeVaterpan niyobona ukuthi abantu bahlele esimeni esinjani. Niyobona abantu ukuthi bahlele kwisimo esinjani. Lento esikhulumayo akuyona history. And if it doesn't come to a stop, kusho ukuthi kuzobuyelwa emuva. Siphakamise nathi sibe ngama-guerrilla war njengaphambilini. Ngoba ukufa sikusabi. Bafile bangaphambi kwethu. Nathi sizofa sifela ingane zethu. Ngokusho njalo bengizocela ukuthi le process yenu enikhulumayo esilungu esikhulu esama expropriation nani ispeed up le process le ngoba sihleli phezulu kwe ticking bomb njengamanje. Sihleli phezulu kwe ticking bomb njengamanje. And then ngicelayo futhi okugcina Honorable Chair, mawuza kwi-meeting efana nale, informa umphakathi in advance so that umphakathi mawufika la ufike uprepared. Ngoba manje into esizokhuluma ngayo lana asiyazi thina. Bakhona abamhlophe bona sebe prepared. Bayakwazi ukuthi like ba manipulate lama act ngendlela bawo manipulate ngayo. Thina lama act asiwazi. Kanti manje sinika isikhathi sokuthi nathi sihambe siyenze research so that masifika la sikhulume ngento esiyaziyo. So next time siyacela ngokunihlonipha ukuthi kwi meeting esifana nalezi ni informe umphakathi in time. Ngiyabonga.
Dumelang abshenis nna lebitso la ka ke nna Freddy Nelane ke tlhaga ko Merafong ko Khutsong a ke gopola sentle Merafong ke Gauteng ene Gauteng a re bua ka Gauta ko Khutsong re na le Gauta e nkiwang e tlo etsetswa batho ba ko ntle ko di townshiping tse ding rona re le bana ba Khutsong a re itse Gauta ya rona a re itse le go e bona ka matlho a re le ko di mining ba re bontshe ba re Gauta lone ba e rafang ke ye a re itse nna ne ke kopa fela gore ntho e one e ka diragalang khutsong kgalela pele re kopa di-resource le di-minerals tsa rona di boele ko rona, our land e boele ko rona. Re na le I represent le merafong artist. Go na le di-holo tse di leng teng ko merafong mara a gona gore re ka di sebedisa. Dipleke tseo le rona re kopa gore di re fiwe tsone back re di sebedise as artist. Go agiwa yanong go agiwa bo ba ibitsa Elijah Bagai. Ke di flat di a godimo. Ha re bua ka land a ke be go agiwa ke be ke kra 50 by 50 land e ke tla agelang bana ba ka teng. Ga nono yana ga gelwa di flat. Ha ke o motho moholo go ya godimo ga flat. Yes, ke mathata. Re kopa le rona re fiwe tšhono ya gore re nne le our bright future for bana ba rona. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Sanibonani Dumela Nabusheni. Lebitso la ka ke Lefa wa Hamagwaza. Ke e mong wa di bona fight tsa merafong. Ke nana ha ke beya hantle pele ke tla ya khutsong ke holetse ko tulong e bitswang Befelsdorono ko Dielgrala mo khubo ya bonkgono le bontate mogolo e setseng teng le nna ya ka e setse ko Befelsdorono. Ha go buiwa ka tabe ya mafatshe tse ding tsa dintwa ke di tlhaloganye sentle mare ha le ka utlwa tabe ke tlang ka yone ke nana rona le lona re tlo tsamaya tsela e one. Kutlwa go buiwa ka gore go na le gore go duelwe mafatshe go na le puo gape e reng go busetswe lefatshe ko bathong. Nna ha ke tlhaloganya sentle o ka re tshimologong lefatshe le e ne le la rona kaofela go sa kgetholle mmala mare fela nna ne ke kopa fela ntho e one ko merafong tlhakatlhakano le mathata a leng ko teng a utlwisa botlhoko. Nna ntho nka ratang gore ke e bone e etsagale ntwa ko ga e wetse e ne le about 5 plus the extension e ko ntle e wetse ya fella yotlhe be go fiwa passage e bitswa ntlo ene mole ne ragile ka Facebook to start with ene Facebook o wa ge ka yona masepala go fintlo e leng ya Facebook o go fa dintlo tsele tsa khale tsa mo ditsweng le cement. So ke ne ke tlo kopa gore nna ke phusha ngondo engwe ha ke itse gore maybe batho ba go gae ba tlo nkutlwisisa ke phusha ngondo engwe ya ile gore nna ne ke kopa gore ko merafong ha ile gore sentle government ya rona ya re sebeletsa why go sa relocate location worth compensation akere ha o ntlosa mo o mpe ya mo o ntlosa mo lefatsheng o mpe ya mo lefatsheng o bon compensatela gore ke go tlositse mole o dula mole ke etse senne ke sentse ka nako ile ke a leboga.
Dumelang le kae teng lebitso ke Joshua ka sefane ke Saku ke na le dipotso tse mmalwa le di-concern actually. Okay, ya pele what I've been picking up since ke attenda ntho tse tsa legislature, I think it's a matter of time. Time of when the message comes to the people for us to attend such exhibitions. Why I say that, most of us re fihla really uninformed in terms of what is about to be said here. So hence, it's gonna because we're not gonna ask questions based on what we were supposed to be here for. Understand? Hence, I say we need time to be informed, so we have time to prepare, so we have time. Then that's when we'll be able to start coming to solutions, because everybody will have an idea, which means we will be on more or less on the same wavelength. You understand? So what I need to understand first, my question first is based on that is, at what period do you give the public in order for them to know about these meetings and in order for them to have sufficient time to prepare for this? Okay. My second question, it's based on the expropriation bill. There's a section, there's a clause that says that the state will negotiate with the relevant parties in terms of how much and the whole process. Now, my concern is when to us the people, even now, to a small child, well, the moment you raise the word government, the first thing that clicks to a child is corruption. You understand? Because now, if this bill is passed, what guarantee is there that it's going to be fair and for each and every individual involved in that bill? Because so I'll make an example. I used to work in a bank. I used to work in a home loans division. Because of us people, lack of knowledge of housing, especially in the black communities. I'm sorry to say that, but it's true. You find that we are desperate to buy houses, but we are not informed in terms of how the system goes or how to go about it. Whereby I had a situation whereby I had to find out that you find that a person is paying for a house, but they're not living in it. Only to find that house, there are people living in it, they cannot enter that house. It's because of what? Lack of knowledge, of understanding. Before you can buy a property, what processes you need to follow, what procedures need to take place. Hence where your housing agents, they can take advantage of people in such situations. Now my question is, if let's say for example, even the very people that are here, let's say they were to come and if your land has to be expropriated, what guarantees that you are not going to be robbed or taken advantage of? Yeah, that's my question. Thanks.
Dumelang. Ka lebitso ke Peter Ngobeni from Chief Mkhale. I've got a consent. Go Chief Mkhale, there are so many spaces that were meant for parks. But apparently, we've got churches. Ne? We've got 3 different churches in a row, and somebody's benefiting from those churches. Please help us. Another issue, our date. That's why we're to respect our date. But I don't know how long it's going to take. Thank you.
Sanwonani, igama umzwandile Maphumulo from Native Agenda. I've got a lot of questions and inputs that I want to put forward. But what I've noticed from my small history with regards to the government is that these public participations, they are just a waste of time and money. Why I will say so, because if people remember, at some point there was a public participation with regards to the same, same-sex marriage. It was overwhelmingly rejected by the people of South Africa, but it was passed. So that is why I'm saying it is a waste of time, but we'll try to put some input so that at least the people that are up there can be able to know what we want and what is it that we expect from them. Number one, the Section 65 of National Council of Provinces, I feel that, as I said, that we can come here and put inputs overwhelmingly and say you want the land to be expropriated. But if these guys vote, they can vote against whatever we have said, meaning that democratically we will be defeated by few people, probably some of them will be given brown envelopes and stuff like that. But my input to the government, number one, is that the government needs to do proper land audit. They need to know who owns what, where, and who's that person. And they also need to go back to the land that was bought or given to people from 1988 up until 1996 and 97. Because if you remember clearly, certain people gave themselves lands. There are people who are staying in lands and they don't have title deed, as they say. and those lands were given to them by the government. Number two, the government needs to put on the bill, and it needs to be national. We need to stop selling land to foreign nationals. Guys, I'm presently staying in a farm. I'm renting a farm from a foreign national. And it is very sad to note that people are coming across their borders. They marry our sisters. After 5 years, they divorce. They are able to do whatever that they can do, buy land and everything. And also, with regards to this thing, the bill must talk to the demographics of the country and must also look in terms of putting forward the natives of this country so that they must participate in food security. Because if you look at it, you are outside in terms of food security. There's nothing that you can do. If, make an example, ZZ2 that produce a lot of tomatoes, if they can decide to close the gate and say we're not releasing our tomatoes, we won't be able to get tomatoes. But we know that if you've got Africans that have been given land to farm, they can be able to say, here are the tomatoes to the market, and the market can be able to go over. Meaning that these people have got, what's this thing? They are able to manipulate the prices because they are the one who are producing. Also, the bill must move away from compensating beneficiaries with money, because what happens, and what it is something that happened in the past, whereby people were given money, people that were claimed for land, they were never given land, but they're given money. That money is finished. That land is still there, still occupied by whosoever is occupying it. And also, the bill must also emphasize on oversight and the people must be accountable, because what most people are talking about is that the government buys land, give it to people, but those people are not accountable to anyone. Those people need to be accountable to the state, because it's the state that gave them the land. And also, with regards to the security of tenure, I'm not in favor of security of tenure, because with the security of tenure, that means the white people can buy the land back to you. You'll go and ask for a loan to a bank, you fail to pay, the bank is going to expropriate that land because they're failing to pay. So instead, the land must, the security must be given to the state with regards to land. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, goeiedag, Dumelang Bagolo. Greetings to all, and greetings to the committee. Thank you for the presentation. Firstly, I wanted to state one of the issues. Having been the executive mayor for 16 months, I know some of the systemic challenges in terms of especially housing and land allocation. For instance, since 2018, there has been a rapid land release program within Gauteng that's meant to disperse and give title ownership to beneficiaries so that they can have sites and service and build their own structures. However, when we engage with, for instance, just as an example in Mogale City, Volbank 81 and 82, it's a provincial-owned parcel of land. We've applied to the provincial departments of both human settlements as well as infrastructure to start the bulk infrastructure layout so that we can have site and service stands given to the people so that those people can build for themselves as a measure to enhance real property ownership, not simply having the whim of a government saying you can have it for 5 years, then when the next minister comes in, they decide it's in public interest to expropriate, which is just a fancy word for theft. Secondly, when we go to section 19 of the bill itself, you'll notice that there's an implication as to the compensation that will be paid. And between the notice of expropriation, the possession of the property, and then the registration at the title deed, there's a certain amount of time that effluates between there. And yet, the motivation in this bill is that certain levies for property tax, for instance, will still be on the previous owner's account instead of the expropriating authority. And this means that there's a financial implication, and therefore there's an incidental let's say, cause onto a money bill, which would in fact need an entirely subsection in the bill itself that will speak to the effect on the Provincial Finance Management Act or Municipal Finance Management Act, or any other Section 77 bills that have an implication on the money bill, for instance, when it's property tax levies, etc. Lastly, I also wanted to say that the government is in possession of 17 million hectares and over 5,000 farms, and many of them, we can point to Carmel Estate, we can point to the Tolton Tunnels, we can talk to the Swaneville Agri Park. They are not working optimally, and they are not benefiting the communities that they're meant to benefit. What would be much better, and I want to agree with both Ntate, Master Push, as well as Siposiso, DMRE is being very useless when it comes to proposals that we put forth, both at the municipality and from the private sector and the community. What's most of the mine dumps, if they aren't owned by the government, then they are owned by the private sector, and yet there's no long-term planning for what's going to happen with these dumps, and many of them can become industrial sites, they can become agricultural inputs, they can become commercial sites, they can be used for residential purposes, viable, and yet we notice that Public Works, Department of Agriculture, DMRE, they're all operating in silos, and simply what we're asking is that the South African citizens, especially those suffering from the dispossession of the legacies of apartheid, need to be assisted, and what's terribly sad is that specifically in the Gauteng Human Department's allocations department, there's such systemic corruption that I've heard of someone that's applied in 1994 is still waiting for an allocation, and yet someone that's politically connected and is maybe 23 years old is occupying those very units. Previous speakers have spoken about foreign nationals also owning units or subletting. Instead of attacking private property, let's rather unbundle what the state already owns so that those qualifying South Africans are able to be verifiable property owners with the title deed so that they can leave something for their children and not be perpetual tenants. Thank you very much, I submit.
Okay, Dumelang Bagolo, to the committee, good afternoon and welcome to Mogale City. My name is Lesego Lekoto. I'm a resident there, Mogale City, Kokagiso. And my take on this bill is that indeed, South Africa belongs to all who live in it. And this refers to, we need to deal with the injustices of the past. As we all know, the Land Act in 1913, Black people, we were put at a disadvantage and we were not allowed to own land. However, what this bill seeks to do, as it has been presented, is to still make sure that us, we are at a disadvantage, as the government will be the custodian and the owner of the land. So what needs to happen is that on this bill, there are certain clauses that needs to be amended. I'm going to refer to the first one being the definition of the property. The definition of property as presented on this bill, it isn't sufficient, because my question is, what about intangible property, which are assets that are not physical? These assets can be your trademarks, your customer list if you are in business, your logos. Does that mean the government will have a right to zone Habadibad? And where does that leave you as a person who came up with that? What does that say about your own creativity? So such properties would require its own specific guidelines for expropriation. And we suggest that either additional guidelines be brought into the bill with this, or the definition of property be amended to exclude intangible property. Furthermore, I would like to speak to the fact that the government owns a whole lot of land, as we've heard from the latter speaker. And it will truly be unfair that the government holds on to the land and it doesn't give it out to the people. So we would therefore require that Section 19 as well of the bill be relooked at, because it speaks to the fact that even if you're not happy as you own that land, but once the government has determined, as per the bill, to take that land, even if you go to court, it doesn't stop the process. What happens if you win it in court 3 years later and they've already expropriated? So such things need to be relooked at and reworded. And the bill as is, it was rejected in Parliament, and now it has come back because it was in direct conflict with the Constitution. And the Constitution of our country, it's the supreme law. And we can therefore not support something that's against the law. We will be breaking the law as well. Thank you.
They normally say Africa for Africans, Europe for Europeans, Asia for Asians, China for Chinese. Opu Chairperson, thank you very much. Good afternoon. Mine is very simple. I'm not gonna be long. I just want to emphasize, there was a comrade here, Chairperson, who came and said in Western we don't have a university. I'm very happy that we have this leadership in Western. And comrades, we are putting it to you. We've been crying about this in the previous administration to say, guys, can you do something about Western? So as much as we are talking about expropriation of land without compensation, these are things, or these are the resources that we are looking for at Western. So in short, we are basically saying we are in support of the bill. Secondly, that what we want to do, or what we want to bring to your attention is that thina ngabantu base Western, we are going to expropriate the airport. We are going to expropriate Maropeng. We know very well that this airport belongs to the land that is in Mogale City. But you, because of your stomach politics, you took it and take it to Johannesburg. So as much as you come here and present a bill that seeks to say, let's expropriate land, don't think that that thing will do it far away. We'll also come and do it here at this airport. I thank you.
Good afternoon, my name is Aloysia Jooste. I'm from Ward 29, Mogale City. Clause 12, Section 3, null compensation clause. The DA believes that null compensation is unconstitutional within Section 25 of the 25 framework. The clause is an attempt to amend the Constitution through ordinary legislation. To retain the current wording will render the bill unconstitutional because it will be an attempt to amend the Constitution through ordinary legislation rather than through a process that complies with the requirements set out in the Constitution for a constitutional amendment. Property ownership is a fundamental building block for a democracy and economy. As such, the DA promotes the ownership of property. Other parties are endangering property ownership by proposing expropriation without compensation and to allow such expropriation to occur without good cause. We need to fight any such nation and the attack on people and their properties. I thank you.
Can you please sign for us?
Thank you. Thank you. Let me hand it back to the chairperson. Thanks for the inputs and the questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Member Dong, for facilitating that process of inputs. But as I said earlier, Member Fuchs have joined us, so I'm just going to give Member Fuchs the opportunity just to greet you.
Thank you very much, Chair, and good morning to everybody. We really appreciate you all coming out today to come and give us your views on this particular bill. Now, it's been said before, and I'd just like to reiterate, we're talking here about legislation. This is law that's going to be passed. And if you're not a lawyer or an attorney, I'm not a lawyer and attorney, we don't always understand what somebody called big English, okay? So I do believe that some work should be done in terms of discussing the details with the community before we come to a public participation interaction such as this. So you can get an understanding of what the bill is actually about. The objective is for us to listen to your views. We will then go away and draw up our views on the matter and present that back to Parliament. What I noticed, not only here, but across the whole of Gauteng, where we've had interactions like this, people come and they talk about things that are unrelated to the expropriation bill, right? You know, bad service delivery, housing, zamazamas, all those sort of things. Now, if the chair was very strict, she would stop you and say, look, that's got nothing to do with expropriation. But we understand the frustration of people. So when they come and talk about these things, obviously we need to listen. But the real question is, what happens to these complaints? Who deals with them? You have your say, we go away, and those things are not dealt with, which for me is a big problem. So many of the issues you have, you need to raise with the correct institution. So if it's zamazamas, or you need to talk to the police. If it's housing, you need to talk to the municipality. We are a committee of the Gauteng legislature. We're dealing specifically with expropriation. But we appreciate you being here and making your input. Lastly, Chair, people talk about dying for the land. They talk about AK-47 and Glocks. Violence is not the answer. There's no reason to die. You have the power in your hands. If by 2024 you are not happy, you know what you need to do. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Fuchs. Especially, a tlhalosa ka gore, House lawyer, of course, understand some of the clauses, but it's important for us to have that session before the public participation. It used to happen before. We'll follow up and check on why it didn't happen this time. I wanted to come in before the public works and the legal unit comes in. As I said earlier, I come from the West Rand and from Kutzong in particular. So, ke ngwana ko Kutzong. So, ke understand the situation we are living under. If we go to Kobatswaneng, Ikari, you know, it's so bad. The houses that were there, Hanerkena they are no longer there, the weights and all that. But I know that the premier was going to come to Kutzong last week, Friday, but the executive so that the premier can come and give us answers on the issues that we raised when there was a community meeting, especially the issues of policy, housing, if you have a big house, ne? And then Elijah Bahai, you are giving a smaller house, and your furniture and everything, they can't fit in that. So I'm going to request that when they respond to questions, anything that has to do with housing, anything that has to do with dolomite, with the sinkhole, we must defer it to the meeting that the premier is going to have. But I'm going to request that, but Baba Banebanga questions, they must make sure that they consolidate that and give them to Bomorini so that premier must know that these questions were raised in this platform. And then on the issue, the churches that have been given land, I was happy to see the former mayor, because most of the time municipalities are the ones that are giving land for those churches, so that the mayor can respond. And then on the allocation of houses study from 1997, and so Nali member Dong were in the meeting. We received a presentation last week, I think Tuesday, where the department was explaining the process. They have changed the policy, and then how are they allocating houses, and barefali progress in terms of how far are they in terms of addressing those. But as you correctly said earlier, you wanted the MEC. We'll make sure that Member Dong, fortunately, is serving in that portfolio committee of housing. And I think Lene, she has captured some of the issues that you raised that are not related to the bill. Before I can give the department, so that Skerari, Mr. Push, but you did not respond to the issue ya the sinkhole. The issues that the land claim, I think legal will be able to clarify how there's a difference between the expropriation bill and the land claim act. So I just wanted to clarify that. But maybe before I give back to Member Dong to proceed, will allow anybody from council or the executive mayor just to respond on that issue, the land that is given to churches. What is the process? Because I know at some point there was one of the bishops that was coming here. We wrote to the executive mayor and then we were given, but it was only for a crusade, and then we're given a land that we used for a few hours on a Saturday, and then that was it. So I don't know if he's still here. Mayor, o santse o le teng? Ha o ka re tlhalosetsa fela ka ya go fa dikereke mafatshe, gore is it a permanent thing, is it a temporary, and how does it work? Thank you. Yeah, he's the ex-mayor, he should be knowing, or any of the councillors can respond. Ex-mayor or any councillor? Okay. Okay, let us not make an issue out of it, but I just wanted to explain that the Department of Public Works will not be able to respond to that one, and the legal unit. But if you have issues, there are imbizos that will be coming. I think there's processes of IDP and so you can be able to raise that, because Rona here will not be able to respond to that. But anything else that you have raised, we will be able to respond. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. Let's give legal to respond.
Thank you, Chairperson. I'll be responding basically to two questions that related to my presentation. The first one was basically a complaint that emanated from many of you stakeholders around, the lack of adequate prior notice. And some of you asked, what is the time frame for that notice? So I just wanted to clarify that. So in terms of law, we are obliged to give you at least 7 working days notice. So in various platforms, but mainly we use it we give that notice in public newspapers. So in the newspapers and the media, you'll find those. But we also go a bit further than that, and we also use radio stations and also social media. And also, we also advertise the bill and the public hearings on our website, the GPL website. So I'm not in a position to right now answer whether that was adequately done, because I'm not in the media unit. So the media, our communications personnel would be able to adequately detail when and where these notices were sent out. But I'm just laying out the law, that in terms of law, that is what we are required to do before we even come here to you. We need to give you at least 7 working days notice. So that is what the law says. The second question was raised around the constitutional analysis of our legal opinions, and that I just wanted to clarify that legal opinion is solely for the consumption of the committee members. And the primary purpose of that is just to try and raise potential constitutional issues that may arise from the proposed bill. It's just to sensitize members of the committee on where are the potential fault lines of that particular, of a particular bill that is before it. So it's not a constitutional court judgment. It is not something that even the committee is obliged to strictly adhere to or strictly adopt. It is there to just sensitize the committee as part of the information gathering process that I referred to earlier in my presentation, to say, this is the bill, this is what it proposes to do, this is what we see as legal from the legal side, this is what we see as perhaps potential fault lines in terms of its constitutionality, etc. So I just wanted to clarify that. If members or if anyone feels that, you know, they still need, basically what I'm trying to say is that the option to litigate on a particular piece of legislation is always there, especially if you feel that it is not constitutionally compliant. That option is always there. So yeah, let me digress, let me pause there. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me hand it over to Public Works.
I will clarify one or two issues. I heard some speakers creating the impression that expropriation will just take place arbitrarily at the whims of an official and so on. But I just want to clarify that during my presentation, the first thing that I was upfront about was firstly the fact that the bill will be subject to the Constitution, because the Constitution is the supreme law of the country. And it would be subject to both the checks and balances in the Constitution and the bill itself, because the bill itself sets out the processes that it must comply with. So before any decision can be taken to expropriate, I have laid out the steps that must be followed, starting with the needs assessment and the investigation, you know, the requirements of the notice of intention to expropriate, the notice to expropriate, and so forth and so on. So it's not going to be an arbitrary process. And the most important requirements for an expropriation is that it has to satisfy the threshold of public purpose or public interest and the requirement of just and equitable compensation. Because when an expropriation happens, the distinguishing feature of an expropriation is that compensation, just and equitable compensation, must be payable. That is what distinguishes an expropriation from other forms of deprivations or other forms of, taking of property by the state. So it does happen that, sometimes, as it happened when the Gautrain was developed, private property rights along that route were expropriated, and people were compensated for that. So it does happen that those kind of expropriations, which is a public purpose, do happen. So that will follow a strict and procedural process in terms of the bill. It is not going to be an arbitrary process as some speakers created the impression. I think that is the clarification I wanted to make, Chair.
Thank you very much. You will explain the difference between expropriation bill, land claim, because Ntate Mutokwa, wako Khutsong, I know what you are talking about, because batho ba kwa Mokgedi le bone, ba ile ba tsenya claim ya bona, ka nako e ne go etsiwa di-claims, issue ya DL Krala and so on and so forth. Even where Elijah Bagai is nearly one of the land that was also claimed, go Khutsong. So if maybe we can just maybe explain the difference. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Chair. Some of the issues, several issues had to do with issues of land reform. And as you well know, land reform has got 3 programs. You have restitution, redistribution, and tenure reform. And it is a national function. It is undertaken by the Department of Agriculture, Land Reform, and Rural Development. Now, I'm just going to try and show the relationship between expropriation and that program. Expropriation, as I indicated when I was making my presentation, it is a power, it is a tool that government is going to use to achieve the delivery of certain programs. So expropriation is not a program of government per se. It is a tool, it is a power that government is going to use to expedite the achievement of or the delivery of certain programs of government, like land reform. So if, for instance, restitution, if the Department of Rural Development wants to expropriate land for restitution purposes, it will use the restitution, a clause in the Restitution of Land Rights Act to expropriate that land for land reform purposes and use this bill for the procedure of delivering that land. So that is the relationship between the two. So all issues related to land reform, the 3 programs that I have indicated, have to be referred to the Department of Agriculture, Land Reform, and Rural Development. Because this bill is, as I indicated during my presentation, this bill will be mainly concerned about creating uniformity of procedure for expropriating authorities, which includes the Department of Agriculture and Rural Development. In human settlements, for instance, the Department of Human Settlement can also expropriate in terms of the Housing Act. So if they want to expropriate land to build houses, they can do that, but when they do that, they have to use the procedures in terms of this act. So that is the relationship that I can explain between this bill and the various programs. But expropriation itself is not a program of government. It is not a program because it is not budgeted for. It is a program that is budgeted for. It is just a tool that is used to deliver on a program. I hope I tried my best to clarify. Okay. Yeah, ka Setswana ga ke tlhalosa go gore ga land reform e na le di programa di le 3 ke restitution ke land redistribution le tenure reform. Tsotlhe tse di na le di act tse ba di berekisang, like tenure reform ba re berekisa act e go tweng ke Extension of Security of Tenure Act. restitution, ba berekisa Restitution of Land Rights Act. Redistribution, ba berekisa act engwe ke lebala leina la yona. Di programe tse di a budgetelwa mara within each act, engwe le engwe e na le provision ya gore ba ka expropriate, ba ka tsa lefatshe go meet the requirements tsa either redistribution, restitution, kana tenure reform. Yaanong expropriation ke matla a dirisiwang gore programme tseo di kgone gore di deliverwe ka bonako mo bathong. Ka mantswe a mang, ga minister wa rural development a batla go expropriate kapa go tsaya lefatshe ka dikgoka mo mothong kapo mo bathong, o berekisa molao e ke fetsang go bua ka yone gore a tse lefatshe a o bala le di-procedure tse di mo molaong o ke fetsang go bua ka one wa expropriation bill. Ke tshepa fa ke tlhalositse.
Mphakathi siyabonga kakhulu. Siyabonga ukusebenzisana ngendlela ethobeke ngalendlela lena. Sibonge futhi nokuthi nisiphe imibono yenu ebalekile ngalendlela lena. Sizoyenza sure ukuthi endeni konke ekukhulumekile kuzohlanganiswa ngendlela ukuze kufike eminyangweni efanelekileyo. Futhi njenge infrastructure sizoyenza sure ukuthi I committee ye human settlement iyafika Waterpan ukuze bazobona ukuthi kenzakalani. Sithanda ukubonga kakhulu si committee ye infrastructure siyabonga. And then in terms of ama submissions, I-closing date yakhona ingezi 12 zika June. And then nizobona I-email lana kuma screen to M Shabalala lana kumele ukuthi nim-emailele khona ama submissions wenu. Siyabonga kakhulu mphakathi. Nayi ivelile email. Siyabonga.
Thank you very much. Maureen, can you please come and tell us about the logistics? Where's Maureen? Bana, iketlempele ba tshwantse ba tlo re tlhalosetsa gore what's going to happen, Maureen, what's going to happen with lunch, so that we know where we go to from here. Thank you very much.
Okay, siyabonga. Ama stakeholders azodlala ngapha just outside the door, and abo councillors, nabo mayor, nabo speaker, they can join the committee this side. Thank you.